Call the December 8th Board of Selectmen's meeting to order at 6:30. Mr. Pinio, do we have a need for a non-public session?
Good evening, Madam Chairperson. We do not.
Okay. We do not have any minutes. We do not have any public hearings. So the next item on the agenda is public input. If anybody would like to just give us public input at this time, please come up to the microphone. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to the bulk vote. The weekly manifest for December 3rd, 2021 was $4,490,850.72. We have one intent to cut, and that's all that's on the bulk vote. Does anybody have any concerns or questions about the bulk vote? Hearing none, can I have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. All righty. We have no board committee appointments. We're going to go on to new business. First item, request for a capital reserve fund, emergency repairs, the effluent disposal pond. Mr. Ford, are you here?
He's not here yet, so we may want to.
Okay, we will move on to the next one and come back to that. Next item on the agenda is the master bike trail plan discussion. Mr. Pinio, do you want to start this off?
Yeah. So there's been a lot of discussion about the bike trails which are being built in town. Myself, Christine Collins from Parks and Rec, Tavis, Austin from Planning Department, met with Selectmen Freudenberg and Deshays and the two bike groups to discuss the projects that have happened to date and their visions going forward. As a result of that meeting, we had a follow-up. During that follow-up, we felt it was important that these two groups come in front of the Board of Selectmen, discuss what has been done on town property to date and what their visions are going forward. We have two PowerPoint presentations that they would like to go through tonight for you. The first one is from the Wolfeboro Single Track Alliance, and if you guys want to have at it, please do.
Thank you. Thank you for having us all here this evening. My name's Andrew Ingram, and I think you've heard my story before. There may be a couple of folks on the Board of Selectmen that haven't, but a little over 3.5 years ago, Dan and the Conservation Commission was beginning to build trails out at Wiley Brook, Fernald Station, we've been calling it. And I was on a non-compete with the corporation that I had been working for, and I had a 12-month time frame to give back to the community. And before that, I had run a independent product testing company here in town where a lot of town people tested a lot of fun product for me. And I want an opportunity to give back. And so Dan and I came up with an idea to put together a 501c3 here in the town to promote trail building and this exciting new opportunity to have better built bikes, our youth in town, and folks that want to go out bird watching, trail running. I mean, we've seen it all out there, and they seem to really be loving it. So we were asked to give an overview this evening, and that's what we're going to do. So the topics we're just going to go over is the existing partnerships and MOUs that we have, a little bit about us, the trail building update, and future vision and opportunity. And there's a lot of that. So Wolfeboro Single Track Alliance, we are dedicated to the building and maintaining of mountain bike trails in Wolfeboro. And as a 501c3 organization, we're about bringing in financial donations, and then as a board and as a group, making collective smart decisions on how to go forward with that. So yeah, next slide. Our mission as a nonprofit dedicated to the development and care of sustainable multi-use trails designed for mountain biking. These statements you can find on our website, which has been up and running for a couple years now, And we have a brand-new site that we had a donation made for to update the maps and the way we go about recruiting members and raising money. So, we are a group of passionate mountain bikers of all ages, skills, and disciplines. We work with land managers to ensure access to well-built, sustainable trails while protecting the environment at the same time. And we envision Wolfeboro as a home and a destination with an expanding network of sustainable trails, providing mountain bikers and other non-motorized users with recreational and athletic opportunities. So I think what's exciting about this group is that these individuals we've put together.
For some reason,
The
it will
ghost of
reconnect in
town
just a
hall
second.
lives. Basically, Brad Helfer is our legal representation. We don't want to do anything that isn't right as we go forward building trails. Brad also has 2 new knees and probably mountain bikes more than all of us put together in this room. Dan Coons, who you guys all know well, he's our representation for the Conservation Commission. Grant Hatch, who you all know has run many businesses here in town and is currently on the board of the Friends of Abenaki. Rudy Meyer, we think he works for the CIA, we're not sure yet, but still works in that corner office for like 20 years. But no, he's our most advocate about trail maintenance. He's out there every day and works really hard to keep trails going with our volunteer group that we'll get into in a little bit. Anybody out? Chris Dow is our technical representative. You guys all know the Dow families in town, and Chris is a really savvy tech guy. He's done our website. He's done a lot of stuff behind the scenes. He's done this presentation for us. He does a lot that nobody sees, but really sharp guy who works for a really big software company and does a good job. So, yeah, next slide, please. So our existing partnerships and MOUs, we're missing a bunch on here, but we put this together yesterday morning for this meeting, so I can get into that a little bit. But one of the first partnerships we made was with the Wolfeboro Tuftonboro Land Bank, and they made a donation to us right off the bat with the idea that they want to make larger donations for a pump track to be either at the Nick or at one of the other locations down the road. Our strongest partnership to date is with the Lake Region Conservation Trust for the Sewell Woods management that we manage in conjunction with the Wolfeboro Cross Country Ski Group. Talked to Dave today. I talk to him quite frequently, and you know, we do a lot of good work for those guys. The Yum Yum Shop with some of the finances that have come our way, and the Summer Race Series, which is a group from North Conway. We put a race on at Abenaki this summer that was really successful, and we slated another date for January the 24th, or July the 24th of this summer. So all good stuff. All right. Yeah. Partnerships that we have in town that haven't been mentioned is with Leonie McDonald Roberts. Chris McKay was on our board for some time until he went to start another mountain bike group up in North Conway, which they're building tremendous trails up there as well. So I'm going to try and fire up my computer. Just go through the slideshow, even though you guys can't see it. Catch up to you, Jim. Back. Okay. Is that the next slide?
It is.
Cool. All right. Existing mountain bike trails that we have, the first trails that we built were, and these numbers have changed. I actually updated this after I sent it to Jim the other day, so I apologize. But the numbers are a little off here in terms of mileage, but not by a lot. So Fernald Station on the east side of Wiley Brook, we've got 3.5 miles and recently completed another couple miles on the west side. Sewell Woods is, I think is that right, Rudy, now 3.9. Trask Mountain, which was another Conservation Commission build out at 3.5, and Abenaki at 5. But those were existing trails that Brad Beveridge had put in the 90s, as well as a couple of additional trails that were put in a couple years ago. That's not including the 2 new trails. My next slide is just talking about the trail building update. In 2021, Wolfeboro Single Track Alliance worked with volunteers, the Conservation Commission, and Bella Terra Trail Design to complete projects at Abenaki, the new climb line, the intermediate flow trail at Fernald Station, the addition of the new trails on the west side. Sewell Woods, we had a volunteer day with LRTC, and we worked on patching up the stone dust trails, because one of the MOUs we have with the Pathways Group and LRTC is all the improved stone dust trails in town, both at Sewell Woods and at Abenaki. So that's a work day that we did to get those ready for the Nordic ski season. And then up at Trask Mountain, just brush and tree clearing to keep the storm damage open. Next slide, Jim. So yeah, our volunteer efforts and donations have just been going through the roof as of late, especially Giving Tuesday this past Tuesday. I mean, we more than probably 400% donations came in over last year, but basically year over year, website membership donations have grown almost 100% each year, and it's actually larger than that. Larger donations from individual communities and trusts. We have 3 trusts now that donate to Wolfeboro Single Track Alliance, just because they believe in the recreational opportunity and the keeping of green spaces and that type of thing. So it's been just,
Who are the 3 trusts?
Who are they?
Or
So
do they want to stay anonymous?
They do. One is a politician in town. One is a trust out of Boston. And the third is, we just received the other day, a new trust from Portsmouth. So, but yeah, most of our larger financiers do not want they want to do it anonymous. They just want people to go out and enjoy them, see smiles on their faces. Yeah, next slide, please. So our future vision and opportunity, solidify our partnership with the town of Wolfeboro. I think that's what yeah, solidify our partnership with the town of Wolfeboro. I think there's been a lot of separate parties that have gone about building trails or talking about building trails, and we just want to be the one group that takes the money in, makes the right decision, works with all of the parts of the town, right? The Christine and her group, the Conservation Commission, Board of Selectmen, and make sure this is done right. We want to be the conduit for that communication around the trail building, continue to build awareness in the community and neighboring communities. So I don't know if you guys know this, but with these recreational trails, it's not just about building your town anymore. It's about building in your communities and then linking the communities. And there's a lot of communities between Merrimeeting Lake, Conway, down south that are all eventually going to come together, maybe not in our lifetimes, but eventually. Continue to take advantage of the growth of winter fat tire biking. I don't know if you guys have been out snowshoeing or running on our trails in the winter, but we have a snow dog that we groom the trails at Wiley Brook Fernald Station with, and they harden up, and absolutely one of the fastest growing sports. And we get people from all over New England and farther that look forward to reading Rudy's fat tire reviews on the website and before they go out, and making sure that the conditions are right and that the trails, but when they are in, it's some fun over there, because the trails, I don't know if you guys have been on them, but not only are they spectacular with the river, but they've got a nice flow to them. And I think one of the largest things about this has been help to connect the trail networks to schools in downtown. It's been a lot of talk right now. We've got all the maps from Dan and the conservation group to see where all the land owners are and who the landowners are and where the conservation easements and where you guys, the town, own land. And there's a tremendous opportunity to do something special here in the town of Wolfeboro. And I think that's the vision that this group has and what we want to do going forward. So this is the Swears Time articles, the second article that's been written on our group. We had another one on the Laker before, and just, forging a trail for success. And there's, a young kid with a thumbs up, just enjoying their experience out there. And I think that's what we want to bring to the larger group here in town. So So future connections, this would be a good slide to show Jim if we can get it.
It'll come back.
Anyways, so we talked about Merrimeeting Lake, like the Avery O'Dowd properties. There's a lot of other lands over there that would be perfect to build either double track or single track out. High school, middle school, School Woods, Abenaki, the Nick, Fernald, and beyond. Like it's all doable and achievable. We just all have to work together to plan and do it right. Wish you guys could see that, but there we go. All right, so, obviously incorporating the Cotton Valley Rail Trail as well. The arrows just point, we're not saying exactly where the trails are. Some talk has been done with some of the landowners, but not all of them. So, but most of the major organizations know what we're trying to do and have been receptive. So, all good news. Next. Yeah, and is there anything else, guys, that I missed that you want to touch on? I guess that's it, but thank you.
Board members, do any board members have any questions or concerns?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Dan, I assume that you do all the wetland mapping for all the trails that are built in Wolfeboro to make sure that there's no environmental impact on any wetlands, streams, brooks, anything like that?
So yes, as a wetland scientist, I do walk the potential locations where the trails are tentatively planned and make sure that they're environmentally in the best place possible.
Are they all flagged so that we know that there is no type of encroachment on wetlands or anything like that?
Yeah, the most recent trail out at Fernald Station, I went out and I marked the edge of the wetland boundary to make sure that when the trail was put in, it wouldn't be encroaching on that.
Was that done at Abenaki also?
No, I was not involved with Abenaki.
I have one question, and we also received a packet about a Wolfeboro master plan trails, and I find your presentation very different than that. So, and one of the things I heard Andrew say that this is going to be a multi-use trails. This master plan was talking about specific use or single-use trails. I heard you say multi-use. Are these trails going to be for bikes and multi-use? Can you?
Yeah, I think that's just one of the side benefits of these trails is that they are being used. But when you talk about some of the trail building that's been done at Abenaki, that's a downhill, say, type of technical run, then that's probably a one-way mountain bike only trail. So,
But
yeah.
is that what you're planning on? It seems like what you're planning and what was in here are two different.
Andrew Lester, that's Andrew's plan, so you'll have to talk to Andrew about that.
So these two are not together.
No.
Okay, that's what I needed
Yeah,
to know. Yes.
sure.
So this is what we're being presented tonight. This is
Yeah.
not.
Well, no, so Andrew Lester is here this evening as well to be able to talk about what he's done
Okay.
at Abenaki.
And I think that when the goal of this, when bringing the two groups together here tonight, was to coalesce what Brian and I in the meeting that we sat in with Jim, the town manager, and the two groups was to start the process of, making sure that the two groups are one, that we're getting one clear plan moving forward, that both groups are working together in a relationship so that it's not two different groups out there duplicating trails out there when.
Before we even get there.
Wait. We have two very different things being told to us. This plan is talking multi-use. This is very for single use. And so they're different in what we're looking at. And that's what I was trying to get clarity, because they may eventually come together, but what we just had was one thing and what is here is something different. Brian?
And
I
what,
can actually help clarify that. So, you know, the finances for the trail building has come through our organization. There was just, you know, an opportunity through a donor working with Bellaterra Trails, and Andrew can certainly speak to this better than I can, you know, and they had the opportunity to build these trails, and that's what happened. So, you know, in the future, we would like to work more in conjunction with you guys and make sure that the plan is something that you approve before we build.
That would be nice. Brian?
my question is, who authorized Bellaterra going out onto town property and starting the construction of the trails?
I believe Mr. Lester's here. Can you speak to that?
Hello, my name is Andrew Lester. I'm a little confused because I was emailed and told that I didn't have to do any presentations tonight.
Well, it's not a presentation. I'm just asking, who authorized?
Wolfeboro Single Track paid Bellaterra Trail to build the trails, or we enhanced existing trails that were already there, and I worked with Tavis through the planning board to be able to do that because we were enhancing and actually making the trails that were there more sustainable for like long-term use.
Jim, were you aware of this?
I was not aware of this.
Brian, I think the other thing is that the trails, at least that I went out with Brian, and I know Luke went out, was on our affluent disposal spray field area. Brand new trails. There were not those trails out there. They're single track. You know, a lot of them are, it looked to me, as a novice, dangerous. Never came before the Board of Selectmen. The only person that can give you permission to do anything on town property is this board. And so I'm very surprised, and so that's why the questions are coming up. And
no,
I think
absolutely.
that's why you're asking yours, Brian, right?
Yeah, well, there's a history because the same thing happened in Sewell Woods. Trails were built in Sewell Woods before the LRTC was told that trails were going to be built there. Now trails are being built on. You can disagree, but
Let's do this. He's made a statement. You can step down. Somebody else has, because people at home have to hear. I'm not, and I don't want to get this out of control. So,
I may be able to help.
thank you, Brad.
I may not. The trails that were built in Abenaki that I think you saw were built by Bellaterra. Bellaterra was being paid through Wolfeboro Single Track. We had nothing to do with the building of those trails.
Okay.
We didn't get a say in it. We had no control. And basically, it was just an opportunity for someone who wanted a charitable deduction to pay Bellaterra through us. And that's the only thing we did. So we weren't building the trails. We didn't do it. Bellaterra built them and got permission, town planner, which we had nothing to do with. We didn't talk to him. We didn't do it. Okay, so we're presenting a plan, and we talked with Jim Pinio, and we submitted MOUs that I prepared, and my understanding is that he's talked to the town attorney, and they would like an MOU for individual units. So Fernald's easy to talk about, the trails there. Trask Mountain, those are through the Conservation Commission. Sewell Woods, we don't need anything. We got with the Lakes Region Conservation Trust, which is very happy with us right now in the trails that we've put out there and being used. And Abenaki's the issue, and I think that's where your issue's coming from.
That's where my issue is. And people
And-
are using Abenaki. They're not on Abenaki. They're on the spray fields.
Yeah, and we had, Wolfeboro Single Track did
It's
not
not-
build the trails,
okay.
did not do it.
Okay, that's right. This is you, right? And this is where we take it. The other may have funneled money through you, but you had no oversight, anything to do with it.
Nothing.
Okay.
We may in the future, if we get an MOU with the town and the town wants us involved at Abenaki, we could do it in the future, and then we will need a contract with Bellaterra to go forward with the construction. But we don't have that at the moment.
Okay. I
That help?
understand. That does, because I don't have issues with what you're doing. I have some issues with some comments in here on where we're going, and I have a big issue of what has been already built on our spray fields. It's not Abenaki. That is one. This is behind Abenaki. It's on the spray fields. There are a huge amount of trails that all three of us went up and saw, and so there was no permission from this board to do that. You haven't been on town property, so I don't
We
have
didn't
any
do it.
issue with you.
No, and what we're here to offer our services and our help for the town to get this going, as Andrew said, do it right.
And we'd love to have it done right, and we thank you for your work and offering that. I think the board needs to deal with the trails that have been built on the spray fields. It's the fields that were decommissioned. They go down the back of the hill is where the effluent went towards Mirror Lake. There's huge construction of trails there, and that's where my concern is. There has been nobody who has come before this Board of Selectmen, and it is this Board of Selectmen who has the authority and the power to grant anybody to build anything on town property. And I went out there, and some of the rocks and the angles, I think they're very dangerous. I sure don't want my grandson riding up there. And we have had this came out of nowhere. I didn't know a thing, and I don't think, is anybody on the board knew this was going on?
I would like to see if Dan could go out there and look at them and see if what kind of environmental impact they've done.
Well, because I don't think you realize they were spray fields. They're up behind. There's trails.
We followed the snowshoe trail up the climb line that we built up from the lodge was the same that Peter and Judy Cole.
It's behind the lodge. They're brand-new trails. I was up there. Yeah. You were there?
Behind the lodge, that's not
behind the motor house.
The motor house, that was the snowshoe trail. We followed the snowshoe corridor within 25 feet of that corridor. We didn't infringe on any spray field at all.
That is the spray field.
That whole area is the spray field. All those pipes running through.
But there's a trail, Brad Beveridge had built a trail through there. We followed that trail that had already been there, that Wolfeboro Single Track even has on their webpage. We followed that corridor. We literally followed the same exact corridor that I've been riding for 10 years out there. It's the same trail that Brad and I put in, and I've been riding. We followed that corridor.
What's out there now are...
Can I just see that one?
Yep.
Yeah, what's out there now is not the
snowmobile
single-wide
trail
path that's been there for forever. That was, now correct me, Rudy and Andy, are those original trails out there where
I'm just saying that those are not, you have made bike trails up there and we knew nothing about it. Tavis, come on up and tell us what you knew.
And I'd like Andy or Rudy to tell us what was there before, because we can't.
It was single track that was like off camber, that was like unsustainable because every year it eroded more. Every year it became a worse condition and a more unsafe trail. And all we did was we received some funding to be able to go in and enhance these trails to like a higher level of trail construction that you don't need to maintain them yearly as you would those other types of trails. They're safer, they're easier, they're more multi-use. We even connected the snowshoe trails through it with the yellow things for Peter and Judy. So now Peter Cole can actually walk up from the lodge to the top. He couldn't before. And I know that's a small thing, but it's like we just improved the trails. We didn't go in there like the Wild West. People keep referring to these trails as technical. I've built trail for 30 years. That's not a technical trail. That's considered a flow trail because a kid can ride their bike down it, and I've taken a 10-year-old kid down that trail. Technical trails involve roots and rocks that extend 2 inches or higher over the tread. That is a smooth surface, rollable trail that you can take kids down. I mean, that's like a miracle happening in someone's town to have a level of construction that we were able to do because we had the funding to improve a trail is like unheard of. That's really, it's almost like it's a big gift given to the town.
But it wasn't given to the town. The town didn't know what was going on. That's the issue.
Because I was just enhancing the existing like cruddy trail that was already there that we had put in like 9-10 years ago. Brad and I put in some of those.
Tavis?
Let's take a walk back in time. Shortly after I got here, there was discussion of bridge construction. multiple locations throughout town. One of them was down at Fernald Crossing. So Lenore came in and Lenore said, do we need a building permit for any of these trails? Or for any of the bridges on these trails? So I worked with the code officer and we determined that no, because they were on trails, they didn't require a building permit. And as long as they were replacing existing bridges, that was fine. So then there was a proposal of a new bridge down at Fernald Crossing. And Dan and Lenore came in and they said, well, we would like to put this bridge out at Fernald Crossing. And catch me if I'm wrong, I said, do you have Board of Selectmen approval to put a bridge out at Fernald Crossing? Which relayed to Dan going to the town manager, and this is like a dirty mail thing right now. Dan going to the town manager decreeing that Tavis had said the Conservation Commission cannot spend their conservation dollars without selectmen approval. So I got called down to the town manager / principal's office for saying that when I said, no, what I told them or asked them was if they had town permission to put a bridge at Fernald Crossing, which then spurned an idea in my head. If there were a master plan for trails, because in talking with Dave Ford and others, many of the trails around town just occurred. I cannot find any history of any special use permit for wetland crossings or wetland buffer encroachments or any planning board review of any trail in town ever. So I said what would be most helpful, and this is when I first met Andrew Lester, was if the town had a master plan that outlined how trails could be built in town in a way so that every bridge didn't have to be considered. So there was developed a master plan. That master plan is the one that you've held up a couple of times tonight. And that plan was presented to the planning board as a concept. Because currently the land use regulations require us, that one, yes, require a special use permit for any wetland crossing or any footpath in a wetland setback. So the master plan that you have in front of you, from my perspective, was partly generated to explain to the town why trails and wetlands don't necessarily require special use permits. The test case that was selected, if you will, was Abenaki, as there was apparently interest in financial backing for trail improvements at Abenaki. In comes Christine. Christine, do you have any issue if the trails at Abenaki are improved? Here's a master plan. The idea is to put the master plan in place and have permission to move forward with such things. Now, the biggest faux pas is the difference between what Tavis considered trail enhancement and the trail enhancement that apparently has occurred.
Okay.
Have you seen the trails?
I haven't seen the trails before. I haven't seen the trails after. One of the things that came in about 3 or 4 months after all of this occurred was the apparent existence of Wolfeboro single track. And now it has come to the level of Wolfeboro single track, as I'm seeing tonight, getting lauded for wanting to work with the town, and Andrew Lester being portrayed as someone who appears not to want to work with the town.
I think
No, not from you guys, from each other, which is very interesting, because I understood that the point of this, as discussed with the town manager a couple of weeks ago, was for these two groups to get their act together, if you will, I'm sorry to be blunt, and get on the same page and come up with a presentation to this board so that this board could be affirmed that the money that is apparently pouring into this community of, for, and through Wolfeboro single track and Bellaterra to improve the trail system, the trail connectivity in town, further the master plan, and come up with a community trail system that we can all be proud of. Unfortunately, what you guys are seeing tonight as a board is a disjunct group of people working apparently for common goals, but from different avenues. I'm not sure if one group is looking for more acclaim than the other, or for some sort of affirmation of doing right. I think it would be horrible if the Board of Selectmen were to not allow trail development to occur as envisioned by both groups. But I do think they should be held accountable for getting on the same page and working through a program that allows you guys to approve it.
Linda,
Well, that's where
who wrote this?
Yeah, who wrote this, and when did this become the master plan for trails, and what board approved it? Who approved it?
Who wrote this?
Who wrote it? That came to me through Andrew Lester and his funding source. Who approved it? No one. The title is not governing here. Don't get caught up in the phrase master plan. No one adopted it as a master plan. That was a
Use
concept.
that. This is what we received. We're going to look at
Correct.
what we have. You just told us the history. And this is where I have, it says, Wolfeboro's master plan of the existing trail system, there are very limited amount of optimized special use, multi-use, essentially compromised special use by accommodating a wide array of users. And this is talking to going away from multi-use to single use for specific. So, you know, and I look at some of the things that were in the master plan, this didn't seem, because this is what I got to read. This is all I've got. This was not what we had. This is what we had, were given to be
And
part
I've
of this.
never- I haven't seen the other
And so
until
we look
this
at
evening.
that, having a master plan for trails. I'm with Brian. Who did it? Who adopted it? Or is it, and I think that's part of the problem. This has not gone through the process.
Has this been adopted by the planning board? Has this been adopted by the
No,
zoning board?
I
Has this
just
been
said no one
adopted
has,
by the
no
town
one has
manager?
adopted it. It is not an official master plan of anyone. It is a conceptual plan.
Any more?
So, Tavis, the test, which was Abenaki, referred to the first trails that were going to be done. That was so that portion of what's been done at Abenaki. What was your knowledge of what was being done out there? Rehabilitation of the trails?
Rehabilitation of trails, which to me is clearing out woody debris, getting the large obstacles out of the way, et cetera. Essentially trail maintenance.
Can you show Tavis some pictures? Luke, do you have-
Tavis isn't concerned about the picture. Let's understand. I understood that people were going to be maintaining trail. That was the premise. Premise for me in asking for something akin to, and I don't want to say a master plan, but akin to a master plan, was to come up with something that would ensure visitors to Wolfeboro would have a predictable set of paths. If you were on something marked single track, they would anticipate this. If it was multi-use, they would expect this. The largest hurdle, quite honestly, for me, was getting the regulations to align with people to install trail. Because again,
Now, Mr. Lester said that he's going to maintain the trails for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years for free, and then he's going to charge $35,000 a year for maintenance. So in 10 years, that's $350,000. I don't know where that's coming from.
To provide people with some sort of gauge of what they have to do to supplement with volunteers like Wolfeboro Single Track, and people can offset that. The master plan,
So who's going to be responsible for the $35,000?
whoever has the MOU for the trail system. That's who takes on the responsibility to fundraise for those amounts of money to be able to fund the trail maintenance, either through offset through volunteers, through like trail work days. I mean, that it's very common in a municipality to come up with that type of a budget for a trail maintenance, but it's not necessarily a dollar amount that the town or city is going to have to pay.
Is this board ready to fund trail maintenance for $35,000 a year?
I think first, I guess I'm going to go back even earlier and talk about what we should really do right now. And I believe that the Board of Selectmen should stop all construction on the optimal trails on town property and establish an ad hoc trail path committee to take a look at, you know, the list of all possible trails, estimated costs, the safety, the supervision, the impact of the trails, multi-use, single-use, and provide the board with a draft plan. You know, we got one group here, got another group here, we got Tavis worried about bridges. You know, I feel this is all disjointed, and you know who didn't know anything about this? Was the public. They didn't know this was going on. The Board of Selectmen should hold a public hearing on this. We should have an opportunity for the voters and taxpayers of this town to come give us input on what they want for their trails on town property. Other properties, that's and individuals, that's fine. But what I saw up on those old spray fields and the development that went on there, the taxpayers of Wolfeboro should have the opportunity to weigh in. We should get a picture of what's going on there and let them have a chance to give us input. Do this committee and see if we can come and put together some kind of a master plan with specific criteria about how we're going to move forward. Jim has gotten some information from town attorney on what we have to do in terms of individual lots. What kind of MOUs do we want to get established after we get the public input? So I'm going to start down here, since this end of the table. Well, no, this end of the table has had a lot of say. I'm going to start with Brad, and we're going to come right around and let's see where everybody is.
Put a little bit more history into this too. So I spent many years from probably early 1980s through about 2005 working with the Wolfeboro Cross Country Ski Association and dressing up a lot of the Sewell Woods trails. And we did a little bit of work up at Abenaki and some of the trails up there back in that time frame for the cross country skiing and stuff. So I spent a lot of time out in the woods there on those trails on an annual basis. Definitely do have an issue with the amount of work that appears to have been done on town property without our knowledge, especially up in the, being in the spray field and stuff. I think if we had conversations about that, that knowledge would have been moved over to Andrew and stuff, and they would have known that that was an active spray field area and stuff there. So the lack of communication there, I think, is obviously is a main issue. So I would definitely like to see these two groups come together, as we've been talking about, to have a common goal. I think they both have great ideas, and this is a very a good project. It's it's a major task to take on. I mean, there's a lot involved here, a lot of trails to be built and stuff for that this to all come to fruition. So I agree. I think we need to put together a subcommittee, task group, whatever you want to call it, sit down, meet with these two groups, and kind of come up with a plan, how we're going to move forward from here, and approach it that way.
Dave?
I have to agree with Brad somewhat, but the other thing is some of these trails, I believe, are on conservation land, owned by the Conservation Commission.
Correct.
And private landowners.
That's correct.
So I don't know how we can say no to those particular things that are being done. I do, however, agree that if there is a lot of work going on, and I'm not sure about exactly what it is up in the Sprayfield area and what was there prior to, what's there now. Certainly I don't know, because I'm not a biker or a cross-country skier, so I don't know what it was like. Certainly know that there has been work done on conservation land, having been to some of the conservation meetings, and realizing that there are quite a few areas that are being utilized for single track and snowshoeing and, cross-country skiing and that stuff on trails that are taken care of by the Conservation Commission. I certainly know that at some of the meetings I've been to, Dan has been very thorough in some of the stuff that he has done for the Conservation Commission as far as wetlands, which I think somebody had brought that up. I don't think that, that's an issue. The town on land, on the other hand, that's something different. But anything I've been involved with as far as the Conservation Commission has been on their properties. This is the first I've known of this issue. And I think that some type of subcommittee, I think these people are willing to get together, whoever you want, to be from here, whether it be Tavis, he's probably the one to organize the thing. But that's, I think, where we should go. As far as anything being done on conservation land, that I don't think needs to stop, because that's been all done through the Conservation Commission. Quite a bit of that being done in different places, I know. That's right.
When I made that, I was not relating to conservation land. That's under the control of the Conservation Commission.
Well, I just
and
wanted,
that's
to make
the-
sure that that was understood.
Yeah, I absolutely, I'm talking about up on the
There are some
straight.
things being done on conservation land, similar issues, single track bridges, those kinds of things.
Yeah, but that's managed by the
Don't-
Conservation Commission.
Yeah, yes. Don't want to get the two of them butting heads either, knowing that the Conservation Commission has been, at least the meetings I've been to, have been pretty thorough about what they're doing on their own properties. So that's a separate issue from what you're talking about.
Correct, correct. Definitely separate. Luke, you done? I'm sorry.
No,
Get you off.
I mean, I don't want to drag Christine into it, but she's going to get into it anyway at some point, as far as where those trails are and whether they are on our property and so forth. But I think, she's going to be somewhat of a key to this as well, to be involved in it, I would say, along with Tavis and whoever these two groups want to put in the mix.
Luke,
I think, to start off, what I want to say, and, looking back when the two groups met with Brian, myself, and the town manager, we want to remember that these are positive, the trail system and outdoor sports and activities and recreation in Wolfeboro is, that's a very positive thing. And, we have the intent of what's going on is a very positive thing, and bringing these two groups together is a positive, and hopefully that can get facilitated and get coalesced over the course of the winter. Certainly, as the selectmen are stewards of public land, and what happens on public land needs to be not only discussed, but it needs to be a public hearing on it so that the public has an opportunity to get out to it and decide, what the entire trail system is going to look like as it grows, because it's going to be a resource for Wolfeboro that will then get handed over at some point to Christine and Parks and Rec, the town, and we're going to be responsible for not only maintaining it, protecting it, but facilitating all the other aspects of things that are going to happen out there. And I think it's a good time that it is winter, because we can take a break, look at what's happened, what's been done, and look at it with the two groups and form a committee, because I have other issues that, beyond the trails, and I think the trails, to a large extent are great, and they're going to bring a lot of people to Wolfeboro. It's great that we have people out there that are willing to contribute vast amounts of money to an idea, but the idea needs to be conceptualized not only between the two groups, but the public, and balance the public's need and desires with what Single Track wants, or other groups that are all involved, cross-country skiing and snowshoeing and all the different groups. That all needs to be balanced out. I'd be happy to sit on a committee like that, because I think going forward with these trails behind Abenaki and other trails too, I think we really got to sit down. We're building this trail system. There's other issues, with the chief, and if someone does get hurt on one of these trails, how we're going to get out there, developing a plan, signage so that people aren't getting lost out there, so that they know that that certain trails are, beginner, intermediate. There's a whole range of things that need to be done, and that's where, a committee going forward and working with both groups, because, like I said again, these are positive things. It's just that the board should have known, obviously, the town should have known about what was going on, but I think moving forward, that's where I see things going. I'm going to try to keep it positive, because I think it's a great resource that someone wants to come in and, contribute that much money to the town and build something like this.
All right. First of all, I commend the building of trails in the town. I've used all the Sewell Woods trails, not as many of the single track, but the stone dust trails. I've gone out to Fernell Crossing, and I enjoy the bike trails. You can take a rail trail now from New York to Canada, can't you? But it's a trail that anybody can use. It's not something that only somebody with certain skills and certain abilities can use. Jim, I have a question. Town liability. Are we covered for things that happen out there? Are we going to have an addition to our insurance policy?
I can't answer that question. That is one of the criteria that I have to work through with the MOU. I just can't answer that.
Now, question for this whole group. Who has seen those trails? Show of hands. The ones at Abenaki.
Okay, there you go. That's the one we want.
All right. So I would implore that everybody goes out and looks at those trails. I hope also that the Single Track Alliance make sure they know how their money is spent. When money is coming through to you by donors and it's being paid by you to somebody, you're kind of responsible for what they're doing. In a way, you are. You've paid them to do something. Sure as hell, I'd want to see what they're doing. That would protect me. I'm not going to give money to somebody to cut down a sequoia tree because that's not going to work. And I hope that we don't have the kind of situation, there's lots of energy and lots of excitement. We go out there and we're just going to do it, and once it's there, there's no going back. Now the town's going to have to live with it. Now the town's going to have to maintain it. Now the town's going to have to pay for it. But we got what our vision was. So it has to be something that, because not everybody in town is going to use this. There's a small group of people in town that are going to use it. There's probably more people from out of town that are going to use it. And that's kind of shown in that where's all our money coming from? Out of town. So people from out of town are using their money to create a destination for them to go to in Wolfeboro to do their recreation. That's a great thing, I guess. But we got to make sure that this benefits the town and people coming from out of town.
Okay.
Yeah, go.
Sure. You may go speak.
I'm Rudy Meyer, for those of you who don't know. In town for 30-plus years and been mountain biking, Nordic house all the way. Out trails, you can go from my house all the way. 2 groups. We want a single group. And this is where, as Wolfeboro Single Track, we can come in and deal with all the legal crap that we're dealing with, so that somebody like Andrew, who has these incredible ideas and fantastic talents, can go build trails. And he's come up, with all these ideas. I mean, a lot of this was his brainchild. Getting Dan initially to build trails at the Conservation Commission at Fernald is really the spark that started the whole thing. And from there, everything has just grown. Andrew left town for some time, and he came back, and we were all excited because now we actually have somebody with talent and vision in town who can make this happen. So where we are today is we would like to really have WSA, help with the town, come up with the ideas, present the ideas, get the approval, get the planning, to have everything done, so then someone like Andrew can go do what he does best and make stuff happen.
Now, the single track trails behind Sewell Woods are beautiful. They blend in with nature and everything, and they're wonderful. The trails and we saw some of the old trails at Abenaki, again, kind of blended in. Does anybody think that these trails that were built up on Abenaki right now have added to the beauty of the natural environment on the side of that hill?
And you have to understand, you're talking about, I want to take my car and I want to go drive downtown, or I want to take my car and I want to go to the racetrack in Tamworth, right? Trails at Abenaki are specific. The ones that you saw are very specific, like Highland Park, Loon, Killington, you name it, bike park, right? They are bike park trails.
Who owns those?
Who owns what?
Those places you mentioned.
Killington does. Burke does. I mean,
The ski area, that's right,
ski
they're
industry.
privately owned by ski
Right?
mountains.
But you also have like Carabasset Valley up in Maine, and that town was revived with the building of bike trails. So not to get into the details, Brian,
Yeah,
I'm trying
Brian.
to just present the idea of, we would like to, we're here to come together as one. Help move forward through where we are right now. That's just kind of, Luke, I think, said it best, where we have this incredible opportunity. If you do look at the master plan and showing how things connect from the high school to the middle school to the Nick, to Fernald, then all the way to Abenaki, all come into town. You can drive, you can park downtown, and you can go for a 15-mile bike ride and come back to town and go out to dinner. It's kind of like, and that's what brought another place like Burke Mountain. Burke Mountain is another great example where the town, the area, and they've gone through all private land and got permission to build. And if you go up there any day, if it wasn't for COVID, it's amazing, the hundreds, thousands of people, and all the Airbnbs and everything that's brought on just by giving people a place to go.
I'm going to cut you off. We still got a lot.
All right, but I just wanted to say that
I
this
want to
is-
thank you
We
for,
are here to be shown as one group,
okay.
with different skills and different sets, so.
Thank you for your input. I think the issue here is I'd like to get that committee together. I want to make sure that we put your projects together and let us have a public hearing so the public hears what's going on and get their support that this is what they want to see happen in the trail system. Definitely, I'm very concerned about work being done on town property that I knew nothing about. What the trails are like, the safety, all those items. Obviously, we must have had some miscommunication here. I absolutely I think I'm pleased that we're going to do trails and bikes. I want to make sure that we have multi-use. I don't want to have trails that we have all of a sudden become single track and not be able to have multi-use of it. So I think if we form that committee, and I think the board at another meeting can kind of decide how we want to put that committee together and get working on getting everything pulled together and coming forward with a plan that we can hold a public hearing so the public can hear what you have planned and understand what we're doing on town property as it relates to conservation property, as it relates to private property, and so they get a picture of the whole process. So is that okay with the board?
Do we need to have a motion and a vote that they will stop what they're doing now until?
I think it would be until this committee, yeah, I would like that motion.
All right, so I make a motion that from the current date, today is 12/8/2021, until a committee is formed and a public hearing is realized that construction of additional trails on the Sprayfield property, town property, and Abenaki town property ceases until further notice.
And I'll second that. Dave?
I think if you're going to do this, the motion should include any town property at this time, not just Abenaki or the Sprayfield.
Okay. So amended.
Thank you, Dave. Any other additions to that motion? I will second it. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll move over. Now, you saying the board takes forever to do it. I will try to move government going faster.
We can do that.
Thank you. I hear you. We'll move. We just need to form the committee, and then you're going to have to do a lot of work to put together so we can do that. And we may want to pinpoint a date to head for.
I get in trouble for going too fast in government all the time.
Thank you for coming. Brad, do you want to say something? Yes, conservation land was not
that's
part of
separate.
this motion.
That's
You're,
separate.
that's under the Conservation Commission. Oh, I agree with you 100%. Yes, yes. It was only on construction, and conservation land goes through the Conservation Commission, only town property. Yep. Tavis?
Just a point of clarification, you keep talking about conservation property. So there, such as Fernald Crossing, which is conservation property but town-owned land.
But
Which
if you,
Which conservation land are you specifically
I'm talking
exempting?
about RSA 9111, I think is dash A, that
So-
puts all the authority for the conservation land in the realm of the Conservation Commission, not under the Board of Selectmen. And I read that
Right.
RSA to make sure, and that's what we're talking about, okay?
I also think one of the things that we've been talking about in this group is, even if they are going to be building on conservation land, as a courtesy going forward, they will probably come to the Board of Selectmen and have a discussion for insurance purposes and et cetera. And we did agree with that.
Perfect. Sounds good. All righty, thank you very much.
And if anybody needs or wants to go up and look at the property, there's a gate that's usually locked over, but the selectmen can take you, get the gate
Brian.
unlocked.
Yeah, you can talk with them. I want to get this going, and we're going to be here all night. The next item on the agenda is, I'm going to move back. Dave Ford, I want to do your capital reserve for the emergency repairs. Thank you all.
So I wrote the memo.
Yep.
Basically, so the last time we talked about the effluent storage pond, we had the catwalk, which actually carried the discharge into the pond. And at the end of the catwalk, there is the intake to take the treated effluent out of the pond. It collapsed and it continued to move and create what we figured was a dangerous problem. We brought in structural engineers to look at the situation and how we could either recover it and or limit our liability. We ended up moving the discharge about 20 feet to the side, disconnecting it from it, and now it's discharging down the side of the pond on horse mats, and it seems to be working fine, so we got a good long-term, short-term solution there. And then the other concern was at the end, we have the intake tied off to the catwalk. We were able to do an emergency work with Northeast Bargain to create a raft in which we could connect the, attach the intake to and secure it so the rest of the catwalk would no longer be a problem. That emergency work is the request I'm making here tonight to use the money from the Cap Reserve Fund at the wastewater treatment facility to pay for that work.
Step down, Madam Chair. I didn't get a chance.
I could hear you moving over there. I thought you were on your way out. Okay. Does board members, does anybody have any questions? Dave has filled us in about this multiple times. We did get to see it when we went up to look at those fields up there, so I did
Well,
get it.
and then you notice then it has totally gone into the,
Yes.
now it's, which is a good thing. It's not going to be recovered. It'll be recovered when the pond finally gets, and we can drag it out, because the cost to put in a platform to support a crane was getting crazy. And it didn't really justify that amount of work. We're still working with the insurance company. There may be some, we don't know, because it was at the end of its useful life, so we're still not sure about the insurance. But for right now, if anyone's up there on their cross-country skiing or walking the dog, it has been secured, and it is now mostly in the water down towards the bottom of the pond. I mean, yeah.
Does any board member have any questions for Dave? Hearing none, does somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to move that the Board of Selectmen, his agents to expend, to authorize the expenditure of $5,556 from the wastewater treatment facility capital reserve fund for the installation of a floating dock.
Second?
Second. Do I have any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? You got it, Dave. All righty, we're going to move on to warrant articles. and we've reordered them so that those people who have one warrant article will get to come up first, and you'll get to leave before we go through all the ones that Dave Ford has. Yeah. Okay, so the first one we're going to do you want to read them?
Yeah, so I apologize. Apparently, our wireless connection to broadcast across the screen is not working very well. As it heats up, it tends to change. So it is available for people to see online. The board does have copies, and as you alluded to, Linda, we've readjusted these to get people out of here. In your packet, you should have received the PowerPoint as built. You should have received a list of what the capital reserve balances are as of 10/31, and you should have received the current Excel document showing where the funds come from. So the first warrant article is, and again, these aren't, the hopes tonight are we can get to a point of getting the language scrubbed by the attorney and get some of these that are bonds off to bond council. So the first one is the electric power reconstruction of Turtle Island Road, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $270,000 for the purpose of reconstructing the overhead electrical distribution system on the Turtle Island tap, which includes the areas of Camp Road, Lady Francis, Wishing Well Lane, and Governor Shores Road. This amount, the amount of $270,000 shall be funded from the Electrical Enterprise Fund surplus. This expenditure will not result in any increase in the tax rate, and I believe Barry's here to speak to it if you have any questions.
Thank you, Jim. Barry Muccio, Wolfeboro Electric Department. So this is similar to our other conversion projects we've been working on for 25 years. It's a 1.5 mile section from Turtle Island Road out to the end of Governor Shore Road. It's in rough shapes, 50 years old. A lot of it's off-road. Bless you. So it really needs a reconstruction. Right now, we have an opportunity where we have a contractor in town that there's been an interest in rolling perhaps this contract, utilizing the current pricing that we have, that he would be able to do this project, of course, with an appropriations clause if we chose to actually save even more money. You know, this would come in probably much under if we were to do that, but that's something I've talked with Jim briefly about and Casey, so we'll discuss that. But it would certainly be after any sort of approval from the voters. So new poles, approximately 50 new poles, 1.5 miles of wire. I believe there are, what do I got? 15 transformers. So it's not a huge project, but it's something that needs to get taken care of.
And I'm assuming that this will be funded through the enterprise fund, and there'll be no increase to the rate because it's already been put in?
And this would be paid for out of our current revenue. I wouldn't, do any bonding at this price or anything like that. So this would be proposed as a cash.
And it's already
project.
been calculated into the rate?
It is. This is built into our existing rate, these projects, for the next 10 years. So no real change in anything rate-wise. So.
Board members, Dave?
Barry, along with this, do you foresee any voltage change in that line at this point?
I think we would leave the voltage, although we would build it for 15 kV standards.
Okay.
I believe because of its where it's located out in the woods with a lot of contact trees, I would probably leave the voltage at 4 kV.
Okay.
But I would build it at 15 kV standards to provide that added protection.
This would all be spacer cables?
This would all be tree wire
Yep.
spacer cable,
Right.
is what they call it, yes.
Okay.
So it's fully insulated.
Right.
Yep.
Any other board members have any question for Barry? Thank you, Barry. You get to go home.
Not yet, but
Madam Chairperson, I'm not sure if you would like to this evening, if you'd like to take a vote to recommend any of these or not, and to move them forward. It's your discretion.
I'll take a consensus of the board. My general feeling is that we're still in the developing, we may change wording. We usually wait until it's been through bond council and everything else, and then we go through the recommend or not to recommend. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so the next article is the library. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $250,000 for the purpose of landscaping at the Wolfeboro Public Library. Further, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to accept grants, gifts, donations, or pledges for this purpose, which shall be used to reduce the amount to be expended from general taxation. This appropriation shall be non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 32(7), Roman numeral 6, and shall lapse on December 31, 2023, or upon completion of the project. We do need to get clarification on this from legal counsel, whether this should say trustees or Board of Selectmen on it. And Joyce is here to speak to the article.
Yes, as you probably know, in the earlier part of this year, the Wolfeboro Public Library Foundation gave a grant of approximately $17,000 to the library to hire a landscape architectural firm to come up with a plan for landscaping the entire library property, including the front of the building, the driveway entrance, removal of quite a bit of invasive species, and the planting of several large trees and perennial and flower beds. We have, I guess you would call it an issue with the way that the article is written right now, because we believe that, it is going to be the Board of Trustees that, at their November meeting, may I read the language of what the trustees approved?
Absolutely, that would be nice.
Okay, I also have, if it's appropriate, I have a copy of that language.
I think you can hand it out.
Thank you very much.
Joyce.
So this language was approved at the November 15th, 2021 trustees meeting. Whether the town will vote to authorize the Wolfeboro Public Library Board of Trustees to expend a sum not to exceed $250,000 for the purpose of construction and installation of a design landscape plan on the property surrounding the library building. Said sum to be taken from donations and grants and will have no impact on the tax rate. And I know obviously that all the language for all the warrant articles has to go through town council, but this is the essence of what we're trying to say. We want to make it clear that we're not looking for any general taxation.
Okay, and also you've already received some funds that could be used towards this, am I correct?
The funds we received from the foundation have been used to pay the landscape architects to develop the plan, which will be completed mid-December. There are other funds that we have, including the Stedman Fund, that the trustees would vote to. They've already had the discussion, so they would be prepared to take money there to bring whatever the balance needed was up to the $250,000. But it's the intention of the foundation to raise as much of that money as possible.
And when the library receives funds, don't they hold their own public hearing when funds come into the library?
We do. I talked to John Sandine, who's the president of the foundation, and just clarified with him today how that money comes from the foundation to the library. It's given directly to the library in the form of a check. We hold a public hearing. And the other money that may be used is the money that came as a direct donation to the library, didn't filter through town.
So I think that's part of the issue here when you talk to town council.
Yep, agreed.
Okay. Any other board members have any question?
Just one. Are you very comfortable with the 250,000? Is that enough? Do you think you'll exceed budget, come in under budget? Have you got any quotes from anybody yet or anything?
Yeah, the part of what the landscape architects did was give us a cost estimate. Cost estimate, of course, came in over $250,000, but it's a plan that can be phased, and the landscaping committee is working right now to kind of tweak that. So 250 is the goal. We kind of said that we didn't want to exceed that, so we're going to try to do as much as we can for 250 with the possibility that it may be a phased project. I mean, there's work that's planned to be done at the far end of the property where it abuts the town garden. So that would probably be the last phase. We're going to go from kind of the front of Main Street and push our way back if we have to phase it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Okay, the next article is Heritage Commission survey to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $17,000 for the purpose of hiring a preservation consultant to carry out a townwide historic resources survey that will serve as a foundation for future efforts to protect the historic character and help manage growth and change. Completing this survey is identified as a high priority in the Arts, Culture, and Heritage chapter of the master plan and is one of the primary purposes of the Heritage Commission. This survey will provide an overview of the community, including its geographic history, architecture, patterns and development, patterns of development and important themes in its history. It will contain an extensive bibliography, maps, and listing of potential and already identified historic resources. This appropriation is non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 32.7, Roman numeral 6, and shall lapse on December 31, 2023, or upon completion of the project, whichever occurs first. Maggie's here to speak to it.
Nicely done, Jim. Thank you. Sorry it's so long. I'd like to ask that it be retitled so it doesn't say Heritage Commission Survey, but instead Townwide Historic Resources Survey. And I put together a little information sheet for all of you, but in the interest of time, I'm happy to answer questions and just hand out copies to you. The whole process of doing a historic resource survey is very detailed and takes a great deal of expertise to complete. The consultant that is pretty much the only person in New Hampshire who's doing these right now has a master's in historic preservation from Columbia, and she has done the sample from Northampton that I gave you a link to, and it's in this handout as well. She's very eager to do it. The price of $17,000 for a year's worth of work seems extremely reasonable to me, and we are very eager to get started because then it will give us a blueprint for the additional work we do, whether it's trying to get other properties listed to the National Register of Historic Places or the State Register of Historic Places, or passing additional local ordinances, or doing educational projects, or helping the town to manage existing properties in a strong fashion.
Why don't you hand us out the
okay
thing that you have, and if there's anything else, I'll ask the board whether anybody has questions. Does anybody have any questions?
That sounds great.
Okay.
It's a fairly detailed process, but basically for any preservation work, it's really good to know if a property is eligible or listed to the National Register or the State Register. And there are very precise criteria. So there are 4 criteria to be listed to the National Register. And then you need to look at age. Historic resources have to be 50 years old or older. And there are 7 criteria under integrity, including design, materials, workmanship, location, et cetera. And those are all listed there.
I have probably a stupid question, but does this include cemeteries?
It typically does not. Cemeteries typically have enough protection, so they don't need additional management. And many towns, this is to go off on a tangent, but many towns have a cemetery commission that helps to manage and protect cemeteries, and we don't. There has been some interest in the past in looking at forming one. The Heritage Commission has been pretty clear that they do not want to take on the duties of a cemetery commission, the present Heritage Commission. So it's not a dumb question at all. And sometimes particular monuments might be listed for, have individual listing, or particularly significant cemeteries. I'm thinking of like Mount Auburn Cemetery in Boston, which was one of the first garden cemeteries and important nationally for the design of it. But I don't think we have any like that here.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, we will add that to the warrant and read this, and if we have any questions, we'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Next one is a new one. There's no financing associated with this one. It's conservation easement to see if the town will vote to place a conservation easement on the town-owned portion of Whiteface Mountain, Town Map 37/7 and 37/8. See deed recorded at Book 3561, page 196, with said easement to be held by the Lakes Region Conservation Trust. Lenore.
Hello, good evening. For those who don't remember me, I'm Lenore Clark. I'm the chair of the Wolfeboro Conservation Commission. This is a warrant article that does not have a tax rate impact. This has been requested of us in the past from Lakes Region Conservation Trust, that when we ask them to hold a conservation easement, they like to see that the voters have approved it first. Just to give you all a little bit of history, apparently some years ago, Attorney Puffer opined that this was not necessary, but LRCT has requested that we do it, so here we are. There's two small parcels that together they total 9.77 acres. This will be, these are contiguous to the conservation easement we already have up on Whiteface Mountain. This will preserve in perpetuity the land that has the parking lot. So we are preserving access to our hiking trail up there. And I'm happy to entertain any questions.
And I'm assuming the Lakes Region Conservation Trust holds the other easement?
Correct. That is correct. Yes.
Yes. Anybody else? All right. Thank you.
Right. Thank you all.
Bridge Falls Path lighting replacement to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $250,000 for the purpose of replacing the electrical system to include underground conduit, lamp posts, and lighting fixtures along Bridge Falls Path, which runs from Fossfield to Center Street. $40,000 shall be paid from the existing Bridge Falls Path Capital Reserve Fund, and $210,000 shall be raised by general taxation. This appropriation is non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 31(7), Roman numeral 6, and shall lapse on December 31, 2023, or upon completion of the project, whichever occurs first. Christine and Barry are both here to speak to this if you have any questions.
A few years ago, I brought this project before the committee, and we had decided to put some funds in it because we knew that we had an aging electrical outlets that we needed to upgrade. As time went on, we realized it was more than that. We have fixed everything we can possibly fix down there, and at this point, it's time to redo the electrical outlets. And while we were doing that, we were looking at the lights. We just finished up, or we're in the process of finishing up that railroad area project that they were working on. So we were kind of waiting until this point so we could kind of tap into that to make sure the lights were matching what we already had. We technically have like 3 different sets of lights down there, so we're trying to have that aesthetically a pleasing view. I asked Barry to be part of this because he's more of the electrical side. So he came down and we got some quotes to look at it. In the quote, we're looking at 34 lights. So it starts from right after you cross the street from the chamber, the beginning of the trail, and it goes all the way to Center Street. There's lights. And I actually walked down there with a group because that railroad project has been completed. And I haven't talked to Barry about it, but we don't know, 34 lights, we might have wiggle room there that we might not have to replace all the 34 lights because we have extra lights I see in that railroad area when I walk down there. So looking at that, we did, yeah, okay, okay.
Yeah, you know, and we all know it's a well-used trail. It's a very, real asset to the community, and it's used a lot. Just from going down there and checking out the lights, I, sort of rationalize, wow, there's a lot of people walking this thing every day. And if you walk it, you realize the lights that are down there are really in rough shape. They're on 25-foot poles that I think were used when they were put in by some of the dates on them. They had to have been. So they were probably leftovers that we had, came off electric poles somewhere. It's a half mile. It's 2,500 feet for the whole run. Like Christine said, there's 34 lights. It's not only the poles, but if you start looking at where the underground electric, where it comes out of the ground, and there's junction boxes, a lot of exposed wires. There's no slip joints or freeze joints. You'll see eventually in our PowerPoint presentation when that comes up some of the real evidence of this, and it really needs a makeover. So we'd like to see foundations put under sort of decorative post-style lights with an antique head. Now, one of the things we've got a lot of requests is they're all jumping on board. They want a piece of the options that, to pick out the light heads. We're really not at that juncture yet. It's our thoughts that we'd probably come to the board with perhaps 3 different options and let folks decide. So we're not locked into anything at this point. So we have what we feel is an appropriate sum of money to pull off a look that will be aesthetically pleasing and contiguous to the lights that we have on Railroad Ave that Public Works has done. So that's our plan. Would have to actually replace some of the source electric service for one of them, really in rough shape. All new conduits, wires, concrete bases under them, light posts and lights. So that's the project in a nutshell.
The concrete bases, are you looking at precast or are you going to pour them all?
We could do one or the other. We've done both. You can buy them precast. We'll look at financially and.
How about the helix coils? Have you seen those?
I've seen them, but
no,
they're not as commonly used up here in Frost Country as some places. So we'll explore all those things, Brian. Though
I'm just thinking those are easier than hauling cement all the way down the.
They may be, but guys that have the equipment to do this kind of business, yeah, that's where the precast probably would help. Where you just come in with a borer, an off-road borer, and you set them. But we'll look at all options certainly when we do it. So.
Okay, everybody else, we okay? Thank you, both of you. I think you're up for another one. Okay.
Next article is Abenaki Ski Area Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be placed in the existing Abenaki Capital Reserve Fund, which is under the custody of the trustees of trust funds, with the selectmen designated as agents to expend. Christine.
This fund, I slightly increased it just because we have inherited some more guns and snow piping. So I just wanted to have money in there to help with the upgrades of that for the future. This fund has proven to be very helpful in need when we had to purchase things that weren't necessarily in our budget that are for Abenaki, and I would hope that you would support it.
Board members, does anybody have any comments or questions on that one? No. All right. Before Jim reads the next warrant article, I fill the Board of Selectmen's position, a seat on the board of the Friends of Pop Whalen. and I have been doing fundraising for this project, so I believe I have a conflict of interest, so I'm going to step down, and I'm going to turn it over to Jim and Dave.
Just for reference purposes, the Abenaki current capital reserve fund is at $129,000. Next article. Going to be long-winded. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4.7 million for the purpose of renovating and expanding the Pop Whalen Ice Arena, and shall be funded as follows. $4.7 million of said bond amount to be reduced by donations and pledges currently estimated in $2.7 million generated by the Friends of Pop Whalen. $250,000 of said bond amount shall be assigned to the Pop Whalen Enterprise Fund for the purposes of upgrading the ice arena chiller. Further, to authorize the issuance of not more than $2.7 million in bonds, and then it gets into the whole required bond language, which I'm not going to read. I think it's more important at this point to talk about content. So the process that we've been through, Victor Druin's here as well to speak on behalf of this from the Friends of Pop Whalen. When we started this project, we brought in Banwell Architects to go through the facility, look at it. One of the things that were identified with this current structure, the roof on the building, when the repairs were made in 2002, those repairs brought the roof essentially to meet code for snow load. However, the superstructure that holds the roof up, being the columns and beams, do not. So we have a building that does not meet snow loads, and then with the addition, the required snow loads were compounded. So right now we are working with Banwell. We looked at alternative solutions, being adding steel to the existing building. And right now, what we're really looking at is a whole new structure, a tear down and a rebuild. A lot of the ice arena components will remain, that being the refrigerated floor. We're looking at this time, the options of different types of chillers or the existing chiller. We are also hoping that for the 15th of December, we will have the final drawings, and hopeful for January 5th to have final pricing, so we can either have the bond hearing on the 5th or the following week to button this up. This project has gotten much more complex than we originally anticipated. So more to come on that with the plans. Victor, do you have anything that you would like to add from the Friends of Pop Whalen and what we've been through with Banwell and the building?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Victor Druin, Friends of Pop. So in going through the structural, we did find that the existing structure did not meet it basically, just due to the era that it was built, doesn't meet the new new snow loads that exist today. So we looked at the option of just upgrading it, making it meet it, and we can do that, but it's going to be expensive, and it's going to be ugly, and it's going to push that building right to the limit. So if you wanted to do anything further in the future, you know, if we wanted to do solar on the roof or do any energy conservation stuff, that would not be an option. So we said, okay, well, what if you take the structure off the foundation and we would also have to upgrade the current foundation given the shape of the building. So by ripping the old building off, the old frame, putting a new building in its place, changing the roof pitch, we reduce the foundation loads. We're able to save the foundation, save all the concrete work, save the ice surface boards and all that. So we're putting a new box over it. The benefits of it right now appear to be that we would get all the benefits of meeting the structural loading. We'd get a building, obviously, that didn't leak. It's way more energy efficient than trying to make the old one energy efficient. So, you know, we do get some benefits of this. However, it is taking this project from what we thought to be 4.2, and now we're looking at 4.6, 4.7. So we are adding money to this project. We're going to get a better end product, but right now that's where we are. We've looked at everything from, well, we'll just say to heck with it, and we built a new rink somewhere else. We're in the $10 or $11 million range, so we're still getting a facility for half by being able to save what we have. We're still 50% of what a new rink would cost. So we're pretty happy with that. And with the fundraising, if we reduce that again by another 2.5, 2.7, you know, we're going to get pretty much a brand new building for what the town portion would be is, you know, a couple $1 million. So it's a lot of money, but it's for what we're getting and the amount of people that go through the facility. I think it's we're going to get a good product at the end, and I'm pretty happy with the team that's working on the engineering and the pricing and the options that are coming forward, so we can look at Plan A, Plan B, and say this needs to be pushed to another day, or this can't be pushed to another day. We have to have it as part of this package. So pretty happy with where we are so far.
I have a question, Vic. Does this include new locker rooms as well?
So the Friends of Pop portion, yeah, we had included the new locker rooms, the new lobby, new town offices, reconfiguring the old front entrance.
So where the old locker rooms are and where Christine's office is, that will also come off?
Christine's office, there'll be bleachers over there and meeting rooms over there.
Okay.
Yep.
Could we, at some point, I'd like
hope,
to see some plans on that?
So the hopes are that the 15th, those plans will be done. And at that point, I'm hopeful that night I can have them for the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. Good.
So do you think you'll get some savings in what the Friends of Pop were going to be doing because you're starting from scratch pretty much, from a clean slate?
With inflation, what it is, I think we might get savings, and then it's going to be a price increase of some sort.
Can you squeeze three
nickels? We'll make it up in gas prices or something. I'm not sure.
Can you squeeze 3 nickels out of a dime?
We tried to do that today with the construction manager, and it wasn't very successful.
Any other questions right now? I think I would like to see the plans and stuff.
If everything goes well next week, you will see plans, okay. And you know, there will be a comprehensive program for the bond hearing.
Broken out. Okay. Thanks, Victor.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Victor. Public safety building construction grade bid documents to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $300,000 for the purpose of developing construction grade bid documents for the public safety services facility planning and construction. This appropriation is non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 32(7) Roman numeral 6 and shall lapse on December 31, 2023 or upon completion of the project, whichever occurs first. So the Public Safety Building Committee is really pushing the concept of the project coming forward in 2023. I did brief the board on that a couple weeks ago. I did reach out to a couple different firms. They stated that the $300,000 would definitely get us the construction grade bid documents that we would need for this going forward. And we are hopefully we'll be meeting with that Public Safety Building Committee next week to finalize some things going forward. The project at this point includes relocating the police department to North Main Street at the former water tower site, and keeping the fire station on the existing site with a renovation to occur to the administrative offices, and the apparatus bay to remain as is for the time being, with an upgrade or replacement to happen in future years. The two chiefs are here now. Luke and Dave Senecal have been on this group, as have I. Any questions you have, we can try to answer them for you.
I have one. The $300,000, that will be engineering plans for both the new building and?
That would be for the police station exclusively on North Main Street, and part of the bond going forward for the construction would be construction grade documents for the fire department facility.
Okay, so it's two different pieces.
Yep.
I have a question, Jim. I'm looking at the capital reserve accounts. The public safety building has $74,714. Is that money you are going to spend this year, or is it something that we will put towards the project when we bond it?
That's a good question. We meet Wednesday. I will be talking with the committee about having an environmental study done at the North Main Street location. I do not anticipate these funds being used, so this could be an offsetting reduction if the board so desired to utilize those funds for that project, and that does fall within the warrant article language as originally developed.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions, concerns? Okay, we'll move on.
Okay, the next one is fire truck and fire apparatus capital reserve fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $196,000 to be added to the existing fire truck and apparatus replacement capital reserve fund, which is under the custody of the trustees of the trust funds, with selectmen designated as agents to expend this capital reserve fund. Chief's here to speak to it.
Thank you, number one. Again, this is the funding of our apparatus replacement program going forward. As we've set out previously, to maintain the replacement program we've been on, we're seeking the same amount we have for the past few years to maintain that. As memory serves, our next purchase from that would be in 2024. So we've got 2022 and 2023 of a bit of a break, but to build the balance back up, hopefully.
And you made adjustments as you go along for inflation?
Yeah, we've built an escalator into the cost factors, particularly for the larger apparatus. We did include those going forward, and the numbers still work, and we will revisit that in the spring prior to updating the CIP committee and so forth for the next 10 years.
Okay. Any selectmen have any questions?
That account currently has approximately $273,000 in it.
What's the next vehicle, Tom, to be replaced?
The next vehicle will be Engine 4,
Engine 4.
in 2024.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, you're done.
Thanks, Chief. Dispatch Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be placed in the existing dispatch equipment capital reserve fund for the purpose of replacement of the dispatch console and other related equipment, installation, and other related expenses. These funds are under the custody of the trustee of trust funds, with the selectmen as agents to expend this capital reserve fund. The chief is here to address this article. Chief?
Hi, good evening. Chief Rondo, Wolfeboro PD. So I don't think there's any mystery here. We've been trying to fund this at approximately $102,000 for the last 4 years. The goal was always to get to somewhere around $400,000. I believe right now with this, I think we're right around, or maybe just to the north of 350,000. Jim, is that correct with the?
Right now, you're sitting at 337.
337. So with this, we're a little bit more than that. Remember that this was always planned for 2022 installation. What we're trying to do, and we're definitely rolling the die here, what we're trying to do is coincide this with the completion of the public safety building. For the primary reason is because every time we have to rip out the dispatch console and put it in to a new location, two things are happening. One, that's an added expense, added cost, and two, we're likely to break components or pieces, parts. These are not portable systems. They're really meant to be installed once and then replaced at the end of 15 or 20 years or so. So there is most likely going to be a slight increase in here if we can get to 2024, which is when I believe the public safety building, the police station, will be finished. If we start in 2023, theoretically we'll be finished in 2024. I only want to do this once. I only want to put this in once. So my recommendation to the Board of Selectmen is to fund it at the $50,000, which I think is very good. And then next year, and we can certainly discuss it, maybe $20,000 to $30,000, just to defray any cost escalations over the next 2 years until we get this thing installed. Any monies thereafter, I think, should be put into a capital reserve account, maybe at a decreased rate, and continue to be funded at $20,000 or $30,000 for the foreseeable future, year after year, to build up an account for the replacement of the dispatch console, presumably in another 15 or 20 years. We don't want to be in this position again. A very unenviable position to be in. But I think I think that would be appropriate. So kind of put our nickels and dimes away, so to speak. I know it's a lot of money, and it's taxpayer money. I understand that, but put our money aside and save for the future. My guess is that if this dispatch console is going to cost us somewhere between $350,000 to $400,000 by the time it's all said and done, a replacement in 15 or 20 years is probably going to cost $500,000 or $600,000. So anything we can do to help defray the cost of that would be good, so it's not a major shock to the taxpayer. Ladies and gentlemen, subject to your questions, that's all I have.
Dave?
You tell me the age of the console that we have today?
I'm sorry, sir?
The age of the console now, the one we have?
So this is a test, right?
Yeah,
it is. I think so we bought this console, I want to say in 2001 and 2002. It was not fully installed until 2003 time frame, in the middle of 2003. So it actually sat in the station for a better part of a year to 18 months before it was installed. Then 2 years ago, or so, 3 years ago, we ripped out a portion of its brain and replaced it with the brain from a distant console from in Maine that was a little bit newer. So right now we're running off a Franken console, right? We have swapped pieces, parts out. So pieces, parts of the component are really from 2001, 2002 time frame with some newer portions in here. So we're going on a good 15, 17 years at this point. We've gotten our money's worth out of it for sure. These are only really designed to run for about 10 to 12 years before they're replaced. Right now, there's no indications that there's no signs that it's going to go into stroke or heart attack at this point, so that's good, knock on wood. We've had no hiccups in the system. Everything is running smoothly, but it is a gamble. It could fail at any time, and that's what our service provider has said.
Right?
How hard is it to revisit an estimate for the cost of the new machine? Is that difficult?
No, not at all. In fact, we have one that we got at the beginning of this budget cycle with the cost and the estimate.
Yeah, because if you could keep that up to date, I would hate to see in 2024 that you show up a little short when you want the new unit to go into the new building. So.
Well, and that's the whole point, right? We want to make sure that we have enough money in there so that doesn't happen. But I just want everybody to be aware that we planned on this to be installed in 2022, and that's fine. And now we're gambling, and because of that, we just need to be cognizant of that, and we need to add a little bit of money because there are cost escalations in here, and they fluctuate. And obviously, and I don't think this is going to be the point with this system, but I just don't know how the supply chain disruptions relative to COVID-19 are going to affect any of this, if they're going to be a factor at all. I can't imagine there's many of these systems that are in high demand, meaning I think there's plenty in the inventory. So aside from the normal inflationary costs that occur over time, we just have to keep that in the back of our mind. I think we're in good shape, though. I really do. I think we're in good shape. I think $50,000 is plenty this year, and I think just maybe with a little bit of money next year, we should to stave off any cost escalations. We will be in really good shape. We'll be exactly where I want to be.
Is there any equipment that's there now that will go over to the new facility that would cut down the costs at all?
So that is a fantastic question. One of the things that we just did, and we coordinated with the town manager's office, we had an opportunity to replace some of the recording equipment out of this year's appropriations. And that's, even though we have to spend a little bit of money up front to do that, that's going to save us approximately $30,000. So that's a good news story. With the existing equipment that's in the dispatch console right now, no, it's really going to be time to get rid of this stuff and start afresh.
Was the recording equipment part of this quote?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so in reality, this quote is $30,000 lower than what
basically that's what we're doing. We're saving money off the cost of this machine with the purchase of this recording equipment, and we just dropped that PO. I think either yesterday or today.
Thank you.
So, yes, ma'am.
Anybody else? Anything? Nope, sorry. Okay. Now we move on to Dave.
Yeah, we move on to the complicated ones now. There's some good news in some of these. There's some bad news in some of them as well. So the first one is Port Wedlon drainage upgrades, and this would be an SRF loan to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $430,290 for the purpose of securing drainage easements and constructing an adequate storm water drainage system. Further, to authorize the issuance of $430,290 in bonds, notes, and then it gets into the SRF language, which, in the interest of time this evening, we won't go through. Dave, as well, you should have an Excel spreadsheet that talks about where the funding of this comes from. Dave?
Thank you. Dave Ford, Public Works. We have been working on this for many years. When we upgraded the Port Wedlon and Winter Haven road system, which are town roads, and the main drainage system that ties into this extension, which goes down to the lake, we knew we had a serious problem. The drainage from the town roads has unfortunately done damage to the beach area on 3 occasions in the last 10 years, and then most recently this past spring. So we had began some preliminary engineering with Underwood Engineers and did some studies and came up with concept plans and met with the New Hampshire DES about permitting. And so we have developed a pretty good project with alternatives. We met with the association, and we felt it was necessary to have a partnership with the association, so they have contributed to this project also. We also submitted for an SRF loan and grant application, and we were very successful in that. So we're going to be hearing 3 or 4 of our projects did receive these grants. So this one is from the Clean Water, and it is 2 grants. One's a planning grant for water for $100,000, and the second one is for $99,000. Jim, I'm looking at my sheet now. Does the opera grant, should it total $199? It says 190 on my sheet. It just says?
Mine says 190 as well.
Okay, so we got a little, some numbers we're still working out, but the total grant is going to be 199, and then there'll be, the total loan will be 231,000. There'll be loan forgiveness of 15%, which is 23,000. In addition, the association has committed to paying $100,000 of this loan. So we're recommending a 10-year loan, and then the association would pay that. So the net to the taxpayers would be $116,000 over a 10-year period.
I have a question. In the wording of this warrant article, I believe we need to do some reference to the association's payments, because if you add the figures up, you're going to need that. The voters need to know that. And so my other thing is, isn't it the state revolving loan fund when you are referencing 486.14? Can't quite find my paper there, but that's what it said. It is the state revolving loan fund. So the word loan needs to be in there, I believe.
Okay.
I think that's one of the things, as we go through these funded projects, with the difference between the loan, principal forgiveness, grant, it gets confusing. So I had some charts. I don't know if the chart can go into the warrant article, but I think we should try to make it clear that the amount raised by taxation will be only the 114, and
dollars a year over 10 years.
Yeah, and this is, again, this will hopefully tomorrow go to the state so that they can review it through the SRF fund. And one of our questions will be is if we can add those charts, because the charts explain it so much easier than the words.
Yeah.
But.
Linda, I got one quick question.
Yep, go ahead.
How did you guys come out with the $10,000 a year payment by them? They're a large association. Do they have the ability to pay sooner, or is that the only thing that's comfortable for them?
well, there are 100 lots, so you're correct. It is a big association, but they have a capital plan. They're working on raising capital money to fix their beach and their other assets. So we did work with them and over numerous years to say, hey, if you want this project to go, you're going to have to do a significant contribution. I pushed them to get as much as possible, and I was surprised that the offer here is pretty significant. So I think that's how the number came up. They offered, and I pushed them to get as much as possible. Okay. And I think it is a partnership, but it is a town road, and most of the drainage is really from watersheds, you know, the road. And again, one of those subdivisions that was done back, you know, 1970s. So we didn't have erosion control or drainage designed for that. So it is a problem that just occurred over time. And now it's one of the most significant pollutant loads going into the Winter Harbor. It is critical for us in terms of a lot of the projects that are going to be happening there.
Yeah, and runoff is one of the major contributors to the phosphorus in the lake, and Wolfeboro Waters subcommittee talked about this and absolutely supports it.
What do we have for, what if they decide they're not going to pay? What happens if they come into financial times, something else happens, they have infrastructure problems? What do we have for remedies if they, for some reason, say, we can't pay this year?
One of the things we need to do is to develop easement language, because we're going to be working on private property. And I think that's a good point. We can bring that up in terms of how we have the ability to, obviously, special assessment, possibly. We got to look at that. But that's a very good question, and I think that can be followed up with the easement stuff we have to develop with them also.
I'm just saying, because
I think that would boil down to the easement language would allude to being able to deed property.
Yeah. We have, in my private association, we have 4 community leach fields. If we were to have 3 of them fail at the same time, we would be in a situation where if we had a $10,000 payment to somebody, we wouldn't have them. It just wouldn't be there. Then we would be going to the homeowners asking for a special assessment, which would have to be voted on and approved by 3/4 of the people in the association. If that didn't pass, then it would be,
But
there'd be
just
no
be
money.
assured, Brian, that this is a different association with different liabilities, and they don't have any shared utilities. They have met, they have made a commitment, and they have taken an association vote. So I think we need to paper it up with the easement, because we're not looking at taking their land, we're looking at having an easement to maintain, to build, and then to maintain the stormwater structure. And in return, they're going to make these contributions, and I think there's definitely a way that we can get it so that town is secured.
And they came to you initially about this project, didn't they, Dave? Or was it a combination?
Well, anytime there's a blowout, and I get called. White Gate Lane started this way 15 years ago. So I've been visiting these areas. Every time there's a blowout, we go down and try to help out. We try to mitigate it. So it has been, yep. And then we realized how bad it was when we got into the design of Port Wedlon and Winter Haven. But because the town road ended, and then there became this constriction and a problem that just developed over time.
My understanding is we will get this easement sooner than later, and it will be in place prior to us getting the okay and starting work with the association. I mean, we need to have it before we start working if we're needing an easement to be on their land.
Obviously, that all needs to be done. The question of the deadline by March, 8th, or whatever the vote is, a lot of this is contingent upon, we got to go through an RFQ to get engineers, we got to finish the application. There's a lot of paperwork that has to be done. So I understand your concern, and let's see how we can best address it. I don't know if I'll have the easement, because their association, there are a lot of people go away.
I don't need it by the time the vote goes through. I need it before we start any kind of construction.
Absolutely. No, we're going to have that for the loans. I'm just saying, I don't know if I'm going to have it by town meeting.
No, I didn't mean to say that, Dave.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
I think we've got to get this other language to with Brian's point. Yep.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions on that one? All right, we'll move on.
Sewer pump station upgrade, Mill Street, SRF bond, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,680,000 for the purpose of replacing the sewer pump station, electrical equipment, and rehabilitation of the existing building. Further, to authorize the issuance of $1,680,000 in bonds notes for this project in accordance with and that goes into the state language. And I think Dave's got some news on this one.
So as you may remember, Mill Street Pump Station is the biggest pump station that takes 95% of the flow to the treatment plant. It was identified back in 2006 and 2007 as needing to get replaced with a major project back then. We have been working really hard to kind of keep it going, but it really does need to get replaced. And both, as the next one, Laney Street. This one here we applied for and received major funding from the Clean Water Fund. So we have a $672,000 opera grant, which then is supplemented by a loan of over $1 million, an SRF 2% loan. Of that loan, 15% will be forgiven, so that's $151,000. And so the net raised by taxes, which would be $849,000. And we're going to be checking the numbers with Casey on those, make sure we get it right. But then she'll determine the tax intake, assuming we'll do at least a 20-year bond on that. It'll be an SRF low-interest loan.
So I'm assuming that all the SRF loans will only be 2% interest?
That's the rate right now, yes.
Okay, we need to make sure people hear that. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
And just on this one too, so we understand, this will be the application process will be coming through, so we have to get the vote, we have to get all the paperwork that goes, it goes to the governors of council for approval. We can spend engineering money up front, but construction, same thing, we can't until all the paperwork is signed. This one, I suspect, will be engineering in 2023. Bid documents won't be till later in the year 23, so this will be construction late in 24.
Amazing.
Excuse me? Yeah.
It's amazing how long that will take us.
Keep it together
That's
for us.
like this. 24 is going to come like this. So if you think it's a long time, that's not. That's going to be right here on us before you know it. Things are going to go really fast with all this construction. I look back on 15 years, and I hear telling stories. Brad and you, we were building trails back in 1990. It seemed like yesterday. We're talking about trails. Well, we built all the damn trails. And back in the day, so time flies by. And it takes a year to get big projects ready. And what's going to happen now, there's a lot going on, as you see with this warrant. So Mill Street is very important. Any other questions about Mill Street? Next one is Laney Street.
Laney Street, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,270,000 for the purpose of engineering and constructing a new Laney Street pump station, to allow the Board of Selectmen to expend such monies as become available from the federal and state governments, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to take any action or to pass any other vote related thereto. This project to be funded from the lawsuit settlement. Therefore, the project will not result in any increase in the tax rate.
So, Laney Street, this is the one I think we've been talking about. Last year, Laney Street and Mill Street were combined as one project. I broke them apart because we could see when the bids came in on the RIB project, we were going to come in significantly under budget. And as a result, my idea was if we didn't have to meet all the red tape, we could streamline this project and get it done for less. And we certainly wanted to sole source certain aspects because we're on the Gorman Road pumps. So what we said here that this project was going to be funded, $1 million, the estimate $1,270,000. And Linda, you had asked, where is the money on that? So I'm thinking Casey and I were working on that. I don't know, did they get the worksheet that we had so far?
No, we haven't gotten it.
Okay. So
But that's neat. I'm pleased that you're doing it because that gives us the verification that that money's there when we go out and sell it to the voters.
Right. And Casey, God bless her, she wants to make sure all those numbers are right. So she's double checking. She wouldn't release them. I would have given them to you. So I'll tell you what they are. It goes back. What it shows you is the original amount we had. And then at that time, John started investing the money. He did very well on that.
Yep.
So each year we authorized money, and each year we underspent that a little bit, and in some years a little more than less. So at the end, we have a balance now. After we pay off the project, which is almost done now, we will be 1.1 million left in the sewer fund. Now we're going to add to that, as we said, on the RAB project, because we went for the SRF loan, even though we didn't need it because we had the cash in the bank. This is where everyone says this doesn't make any sense. Well, this is how the system works.
Okay.
At the end of the project, which is almost coming now, we are going to have about $2.5 million in total cost. Our original estimate was 3.5. We're going to take a loan for $2.5 million. The next day, we're going to pay it back because we have the money in the bank.
Yep.
They will forgive, principal forgiveness of 15% at that point will give us $355,000. So that'll be like a grant coming back to us on the RAB project. That 355 added to the 1 million plus we have now will give us the cash we need to do this project with cash without having to, so that's the really good news.
Good. I'd like to see the figures, but I'm pleased.
Now the bad news. So these numbers were put together, and what we're seeing now with escalation based on supply chain and manpower issues is very scary. This one will also require some new sewer lines. So in my original estimate, I had about $100,000 for sewer line was included here. My engineer now has come back and has making me nervous, which everyone is, all our cost estimates, everyone's getting a little concerned where we're not putting enough contingency or escalation in. There's another issue there. Because we're in the fill area next to the oil tanks, there was an assessment done back in the 2007 report, and there's still some question is, will that become an issue for us? Will there be petroleum products? If there are, will we be able to use the PET fund to offset that like we did on Center Street? So I would like to do is put some contingency in this warrant article because we're talking, it's not going to have an impact on the tax rate. We have the money there, so we might want to add a little bit of money for the sewer and a little bit more money for the groundwater contamination. It's more authorization because we probably would get grant money for that. So I'd be looking at increasing that warrant article, and I can have backup for the next meeting, but going up to 1.4 million, which would then kind of match how much cash I have, giving us the flexibility in case we have unexpected issues to be able to spend the money, but no more, because we still would have the caveat, no increase in taxation to pay for this project.
So looking at that, we would have about $55,000 left after we get that back. That's, once you go to 4 million and what you have told us, we would have 1.455, and so we use 1.4, we'd still have.
And again, I'm pretty conservative. I estimate 3.5 last year, came in 2.5. I'm not saying we're going to see those big savings in this project, but I'm usually pretty conservative, so I feel we wouldn't spend it if we didn't have it. So for instance, say something happened, we only had 1.35 million, we wouldn't, even though we had the authorization, because we said no increase in taxation, we'd be limited to the cash we had. And I think there's going to be more than there, but I'm trying to be conservative, and Casey really hasn't run all the numbers yet, so I really wanted her to back us up on that. So next Wednesday, we should have that all wrapped up, and then I'll have a letter to support that increase.
Okay, fine with me.
It wouldn't be worth taking a small, and I know we have lots of bonds and lots of loans, but it wouldn't be worth taking a small loan on the project that if you do have extra cash at the end, you can just pay off in case you run into problems with the tanks or anything else?
Bonds don't allow us to do that. The SRF accounts do, but the state and federal bonds don't.
Together? Okay, let's move on.
Water treatment plant and system upgrades to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,470,000 for the purpose of engineering and constructing water treatment plant and water system upgrades, further to authorize the issuance of 1.470 in bonds notes. Remainder is language, and we've received a grant in the amount of $735,000 on this. Dave?
Correct. So we are very proud of our water treatment plant, and I like to show it off, and it looks like it's brand new, but it really is very old. And we have, the useful life was anticipated to be in the 20-year range. We've pushed it to 25, and there's some. So we're looking at a complete rebuild of that, and it was in our asset management plan, so we have it identified there. We have pushed it out a little bit, and then luckily we hit the cycle right where the money, this is coming from the drinking water fund. So it is an SRF. Some of the regulations are a little bit different for them and how we spend and do procurement. But as Jim said, we have a grant for almost half of it, $735,000. The loan amount, a bond amount would be $735,000, and that would be a principal forgiveness of 15%, which equates to the $110,250. So the net raised by cash that would be paid for by water users would be the $624,750, and that would be again another 2% interest loan, and we'd be looking at a 20-year recommendation on that one. It also includes some work at the pressure reducing station and at the South Main tank, water tank. So our system can not only the tank, but includes those other two areas. So there's some work to be done there that was identified in the asset management plan. So it's a comprehensive, and it should take care of a lot of the major issues at the plant. There'll be other minor issues we'll continue to work with through the capital outlay.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? All right.
Does that mean that when we have, excuse my ignorance, does that mean that the water usage fees would go up for this or no?
So we have a water rate study that needs to be presented to the board. We've been falling behind. Well, actually, I'm going to do an update. It's been so low. We're going to do an update so we can bring it to you hopefully early in January. So the question is, the board voted 2% rate increases 2 years ago. That would have covered these costs that we're looking at. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we decided to put it off, and because our cash position now is actually favorable because our bond debt service is dropping off, but our rates aren't. So we're actually putting additional money each year into the cash reserves. But we are going to do another study because we got to talk about all the projects, all the water projects and all the water bonds. And the answer is yes. When those bonds come due, the rates will be there to make those payments. In addition to 4 or 5 years from now, which we'll have the big payments, and I'll explain that when we get to the water mains. So yes, we're looking at that, and we'll have a report to you hopefully in January. We can kind of show you those rates and how they impact. But we will be looking at 2% increases a year going forward. Any other questions on the water treatment plant upgrades? One thing I'd want to say too, because this has come up a couple times in other meetings, and it goes to the capacity of our systems. On the water side, how much capacity do we have? And on the sewer side, how much capacity do we have? Part of what we're looking at with the master planning and the work is to do a new analysis of the flows and loads coming into the plant and where we are versus where we were, say, 14 years ago, last time we did it. In addition, we're going to say, okay, we have so much flow we're using now. What's the plant capacity? That difference is what we have to use. And then we're going to look at how the area is zoned currently, and if we had the build-out, can we support the build-out within the zoned area as it's zoned? Some questions come, well, this area is zoned for 20 units. I want to get a variance and put 75. Well, if you do that, then that means somewhere else we can't get it. So we're going to go revisit that, because that's a very important number when we start talking about the future. So that's going to be updated, and we'll have that number for the spring, because that also goes to our pump stations, and the state's going to want us to revisit that. Same time, we have the cap because of the RIB site and our effluent disposal system. As that works out, in 1 year from now, we'll be renewing our permit. We may get some capacity back as that works, as we figure it is designed, and then and once it meets our expectations, there may be some room for expansion there. And that's where the bottleneck is in the effluent disposal. So that's going to be part of the wastewater planning. Similarly, on the water side, we're going to be looking at our safe uses out of the pond again, and a master plan looking at all the utilities. When we did our asset management plan, we said we need to do $100 million over 100 years, and we had 10-year periods. That needs to be revisited and prioritized as we're looking at the plant, the vintage water lines, and the seasonal water lines, which we're going to continue to talk about. Just want to make that statement. So that's a big issue coming up. The next project we had was
Low water lines.
okay. Do you want to read that one, Jim?
Yep. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500,000 for the purpose of replacing existing seasonal water lines with buried water mains throughout the water system. Further, to authorize the issuance of $500,000 in bonds or notes. And this would actually, we talked about this being an actual bond, didn't we, David?
Correct. So this one here was submitted to the fund. It did not score high enough. So we had submitted about a $1.2 million project to get a big jump on our seasonal water lines. I think I've talked to the board on a number of occasions about how that is the weakest part of our system. We have miles of pipe that run over the ground and are exposed to security issues. So we started this year with Smith River. We're planning on doing more projects next year. We did not receive the grant, and Jim and I talked, well, should we put it off, repackage it for next year? But the issue with seasonal water lines is becoming really a problem. Waltz Lane, we had an issue with the beaver, chopped the line, we had to shut someone off, and that's, we have a commitment to deliver clean water, so we had to, we're really in a pickle there. The Albee Beach we've talked about, where the water line crosses through a swamp we don't have access to. So these projects here, we figured it was important that we continue on this, and we're asking for $500,000 here with a straight bond. So this might be a 3% depending on the bond bank, not an SRF loan. If we get this, we talked to the budget committee last night or 2 nights ago. If this were to be supported by the selectmen, then we might reduce the capital outlay, because in the capital outlay we have a smaller amount to keep going at it. So that's a discussion that we would want. So this is kind of a new one, because originally it was thought we were going to get funding. We didn't get the funding. We feel it's necessary to continue on this, and again, it would fit within the rate structure we have.
And at one of the meetings, I think was the last one I was at, I asked you to prioritize each of these projects, and I would like that when we need to take a look at where we need to make some cuts. We need that from you on the water and sewer side.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I mentioned it maybe once or twice. I would love to see a betterment fee for this project, because they're going from having a seasonal water supply to a year-round water supply. They might still have a seasonal home, but they're getting a big benefit having you do a lot of work for them.
We'll pursue legal advice. on that.
Okay.
So the next one, water main upgrades, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $720,000 for the purpose to evaluate, design, and permit the replacement of existing lead and galvanized service connections within the water distribution system.
So this is another one where we're sleeping on this time bomb. I kind of get nervous. This past week, we had 3 leaks. Sometimes they come in 3. Let's hope we're all set for a while. A lot of the original system was put in the 1890s. It's unlined cast iron pipe. And back in the day, a lot of gooseneck joints were used, which was a brass and lead joint that had a little flexibility. Some of the fittings were brass, which has lead in them, and some of the pipe was different type of materials. The federal government is now stepping up the ante on pushing all lead out of the system. We have been kind of looking the other way as we're trying to take care of things. This was identified in the asset management plan, the need to replace these pipes. This was something we had hoped to start sooner, but we were trying to reduce our debt service by putting off projects. We put in for over $700,000. This is just engineering, not construction. And what it will entail is taking a surveying on ground and in houses, because we not only have to replace the main lines, we got to make sure the service lines to everyone's house is replaced and free of lead. Or we'll be looking at all those old lines, surveying and setting up plans, and getting back to what is the priority. We obviously can't do them all at once. But what's going to happen is next year at this time, there's going to be another major funding. The stimulus funding that was going now is being put back into the SRF program with earmarks of billions for this type of projects, getting lead out of your system. So we're going to be looking at doing all the designs this year, and then next year we could be looking at somewhere between $3 and $6 million of water main work, which would also then kick in, well, if we're going to rip up the road, and we're talking about, just so you know, it's all Brewster Academy, it's Pickering Corner to the bridge, and the bridge all the way up to South Main Street, and a lot of the side streets are the older side streets.
North Main.
Excuse me, North Main.
Okay.
So those are our key areas, and that will then kick in the need to do other work. Drainage systems, we have some of them 50 to 100 years old. Sewer lines were put in the 1940s. They would have to get replaced. It would give us the opportunity. We talk about stormwater treatment. That would be more of an opportunity as we're coming down these areas. We can look at the utility lines and whether we can minimize the utility line crossing. So this is a huge project for us. It also is going to tie into everything else we're doing with DOT and local opera money too. We haven't talked about the local opera money, but the last time we spoke, we talked about using this building still has the trench drains underneath tied into the sewer system. So as an I&I project, we're talking about fixing from here to there. So this all ties together. And this is a very important one. And again, we did get a grant of $361,000, but we did not get an SRF loan on this one. So we would have to borrow this money at the bond bank rate, which we're thinking maybe 3%. And this one would be, again, I would recommend 20-year. And those impacts, those 3 bonds we just talked about, 1 SRF, 2 bond bank, would total about $1.5 million. Those payments would be due, and we will show you that in the rate study, how that's going to impact the rates going forward. At the same time, we're going to show you what happens when the next round comes and the big construction dollars come. How do we have room for those?
And that will also give us a picture of how your bonds are going down.
Right. We'll show the debt schedule, the rate increases, and hopefully it makes like we're ready for this.
Okay. We on this one, we only got the ARPA grant.
Correct. It would grant no SRF loan.
All right. Moving on to some bad news.
I'm going to step down, Madam Chair.
See you later,
we all want
Luke.
to step down on this one. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $300,000 for the purpose of reconstructing and upgrading the Wolfeboro Bay Commercial Docks and Wharf. This appropriation is non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 32.7, Roman numeral 6, and shall lapse on December 31, 2023, or upon completion of the project, whichever occurs first. Dave?
Okay, so a quick history. We have cost estimates that go back a couple of years, and we had broke up the project into phases. So the next phase will be called the commercial docks, which would be the redocking of that area where the mountain comes in and the Millie B, and going to the IPE wood and redoing that docks and strengthening up. In addition, we saw an opportunity to bring in another dock that we could use as a drop-off dock, like a taxi dock or delivering food. So we wanted to do a nice job that would line up alongside of the Millie B. Then on that bulkhead wall facing out towards the lake, that needed some revetment work. That is basically just kind of piling the rocks up. But as you go around the corner where the big pile cluster is, we have the rocks, the big granite there, you can see they're starting to move a little bit. So that is the piece of work that was going to be along with the revetment work along Smith River. When we talked about that, the permitting issue, they got very concerned about the navigation issue, so we decided, okay, we're going to eliminate that work. In my mind, I just split the project half, 50-50. Big mistake, because of the Smith River budget, 75% of the work is in this corner. So I should have been more cognizant of that when we first when we split the projects up. So as a result, we're going to be looking at a major increase there, and then so we're looking at probably a couple $100,000 for that work alone, and the drop-down dock was going to be another $40,000 to $50,000. So we're looking at potentially this phase of the work going up close to $700,000.
And is there a way that we could split this and just redeck the commercial part of the dock that's wooden and the drop down, and then instead of doing the 720, can we just do the smaller amount? Yeah, but this is good here. So I'm saying not do that, bring the price down, do just without that.
The foundation to where the blocks are coming out, what the engineers call for, they go all the way down, take everything out, cut it back, and then rebuild that underneath and then put the granite back on top. The question is, can that be put off, and can you do the Mount Washington dock?
That and move down in the, the other little area.
Okay, so Luke Freudenberg, I didn't see the number till tonight. We gave our, I want to just preface this on the fact that I am a sub on this contract, so, or a potential sub on this contract. So I see the pricing three different ways, just to give you a reference frame point. So you have the extreme escalation in costs. I mean, IPE itself went from when the town purchased, or when the general contractor purchased it for the main part of the docks, went from $7, $8 a linear foot to where it is now today at $14 a linear foot. So you have that extreme cost in the change in that material. Then not only did that second drop down dock, which is going to add to that dock that's currently not being used by anyone. So a second drop down dock, and then the dock that connects dock G, which is where Fireboat parks, to that dock. Those are all add-ons that were done after those initial pricing was done back in the day. And then you have the final thing, which is the Smith River, and that first 35 feet of wall, which is going to need to be completely torn back, almost 12 feet into the ground, take out all the old cribs. That really can't be done. That corner because all the stringers, the dock are gonna need to come off, and then all the stone is placed in front of the south seawall, and then the final portion of it is that one corner that comes down the Smith River and then turns back in at a 90-degree angle into behind the dock. So I don't see how you can do that. I think that if you're gonna look at maybe cutting costs, you would have to look at add-on docks and stuff.
So the long answer, you can't do it. You're either going to bond it for $700,000, or we have to save money and then build it in the following year. And then we would look at maybe increasing the engineering costs. We could put it out to bid. But we do have to remember what we see. We've got a big coming in tomorrow. We're really nervous about the supply chain and, again, this escalation issue. So that is incorporated here. So this would be, we have a contract, we have a price. So we're locking in now. The question is, do we take the risk, wait a year, see if things come back to normal, or does he continue to go out of sight? So right now, my recommendation would be to do this piece and budget it all, if possible, but it wouldn't fit into the cash thing, so we'd be looking at a potential, and it is going to be a dock that'll last for, 20 to 50 years, so it would qualify under the bonding, guidelines you've had in the past.
I think we need to take a look at the impact of the bonding. My gut feeling is it would be nice to push it down the road, but we're going to have a big public safety building. We better do it now than to push it down the roads.
And the other aspect, too, which is the balance of the project, again, as we originally anticipated, wasn't going to cost that much. So when we get to that, but now we have the issue with navigation, dealing with the Marine Patrol and wetlands people. So we're not sure what's going to happen there, but this would take care of all the long-term needs from that point all the way back. So it would be nice to get it done now and before we have the next big projects come down.
Board feel. May kind of talk about that tonight, or are we fried and need to talk about it on the 15th?
Let's bring it back. Yeah.
Bring it back? Okay. We're going to talk about that on the 15th one where.
And then what I'll do is
fresh.
I'll take, because again, this all came in today because I've been pushing to trying to get updated numbers. So I will then get a memo to you, looking at the cost estimates, bringing in the engineer's costs, and still having a little contingency.
Okay, so you'll put this fully together for us for the 15th. Thank you.
Okay, the next article is Bay Street sidewalks, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $72,100 for the purpose of designing and securing easements in preparation for future construction bid documents. Appropriations non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 32.7, Roman numeral 6, and shall lapse on December 31, 2023, or upon completion of the project, whichever occurs first. Dave?
So again, I apologize for this one. We had submitted this last year with a budget of $55,000. This year I rolled it over with a low priority, but so I did not update the cost estimate. As it got to this level, I wanted to go back because we have done quite a bit of work. We did a detailed survey. We had the meetings. We had agreed to a kind of a modified design that would be a combination of curb and sidewalk from Bay Street up towards the Taylor home, but then from there on, it would have been just a widened shoulder. And what we need to do now is to secure the easements with that survey. And at the end of that project, they found a few little issues. So this 55 went to 72. That would take us to make sure we get all the easement stuff done. We do anticipate 15 to 20 easements and putting the job out to bid. So next year at this time, we would have the job out to bid. So if we wanted to go to construction, we'd be looking at that. That's what that increase is reflecting.
Anybody have any question? I think we have we're at a different place with cash warrant articles once we pull out the docks, which was a lot better place. Brad?
Yeah, just one thing to add to this, just for thought moving forward on this, because it might also apply toward what you mentioned a little while ago, Dave, about extra usage on your utilities with water and sewer. Taylor Home last night was just granted approval for a 61-unit aggregate living facility in there, in the complex there.
Mm-hmm.
So 61 units.
Where?
Taylor Home.
Taylor Home.
Off of Bay Street there.
61 units?
Yeah, 61 units, one building.
Yeah.
Be more like a assisted living type facility. So I don't know if you're aware of that or not, obviously not by the looks of your reaction
Back
there.
to that, did they have their sewer flow? What did they get?
I
their
believe
approval?
so, yeah.
From who?
Du Bois and Kings was here last night with all their design and everything on it, water, sewer, all that. So that goes along with the sidewalk part too, of the importance of it getting up to the Taylor home from Bay Street and stuff. But just wanted to put that out there too for.
Exactly. We see Bay Street being an extension of our downtown. So to get back to that, I'm just a little shocked because I should have been aware of that. This is another issue. We definitely think the businesses are moving out there. It's a walkable community, Taylor home, and then we actually through their backyard, hopefully at some point Filter Bed Road, we can change that name to a nicer name like Water Resources Ave and make that a nice walking path and make everything nice to max in with the beautiful trails we saw today. So I think that, yes, absolutely, it's a good project. And, yeah, again, the problem is with regards to sidewalks, hard to build new ones when we still got 7 miles of old ones. And again, we did bring that back. We'll talk about that a little later. So the issue is we got to continue to maintain our old ones as we build new ones.
Yeah, I think this, the change, if the docks go to a bonded, we have more cash to move around here than I was looking at when I did my sheet, so that makes sense.
Yep.
All right, any more comments about Bay Street? All right, let's move on to the next one.
Town road upgrades, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1.3 million for the purpose of upgrading town roads, sidewalks, and drainage system. To authorize funds in the amount of $1 million from the town's unassigned fund balance and $300,000 from general taxation. This appropriation is non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 32(7), Roman numeral 6, shall lapse on December 31, 2023, or upon completion of project. Just to give you an idea of where we're at with the unassigned fund balance, at the end of the audit of 2022, we were at $4.72 million, which was an increase over the 2019 audit of $895,236. We utilized about $1.13 million last year in projects, so that leaves a balance of $3.5 million before the 2021 audit. That kind of paints a picture of where we are at. Just for reference purposes, the 2018 audit unassigned fund balance was $2.7 million. 2019 was $4 million. 2020 was 4.7, and again, waiting on 2021.
Can you give us that in the spreadsheet?
Yep,
That would be great.
I can get this to you, not a problem. Dave?
Just the road, the system we had set up last year where we're trying to engineer and bid out the work. So the bids are due tomorrow at 2 o'clock here in this room for a big project, which would include Maplewood and Berrywood and the side streets there. We're estimating at $1 million for that project. And it would be additionally $200,000 of overlays, and then another $100,000 for engineering for roads for the next year. So we would be able to continue that process of bidding out most of the work, trying to get the highway crew away from doing capital work, have most of the work be done by an outside contractor, freeing us up to do more maintenance work. In addition to this, originally we had thrown in some of the water money, but Jim and I said to make it cleaner, we have the next one we'll carry for the 2 water lines, which are separate. And those 2 lines, those roads don't have to get totally rebuilt, so we can work with that, separating the 2 projects.
Anybody have any questions? Hearing none, let's go on.
Water line upgrades, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $125,000 from the Water Enterprise Fund for the purpose of upgrading existing water mains. This appropriation is non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 32(7), Roman numeral 6, and shall lapse on December 31, 2023, or upon completion of the project, whichever occurs first.
And this goes to most of the system there is 6-inch line cast iron, so we're in good shape. But we have 2 dead-end rows, the Chipmunk and Deer. They both are 2-inch steel pipes. Those are problems. Actually, we had a leak today. We were able to fix it. So those are the 2 stretches that have to get replaced. We have a sufficient fund balance here, so this one would be within, wouldn't be a need for a bond. We could do it with cash, and it goes again with the road project.
How much is in that fund? No?
The unassigned fund balance, I'd rather have Casey answer those questions. The audit, she showed us the other day, and Jim and I look at it like, okay, what, and then you looked at it, and you had some comments on it. So there's some confusion what there was last year, and we know this year, we know the revenues are in excess of the expenses by significant. So we know we're going to continue to add to it. But I'm going to have Casey give you that answer.
Hi, this is Casey right here. At the end of 2020, there was $828,000 in the unassigned fund balance for water.
Look at that. She's amazing.
Out of nowhere.
Hi, Casey. Hey, how's it going? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was asked and answered.
Doc committee, and what we're looking at doing is continuing to supplement this account. The plan would be, I'd hope to, next meeting, to come to a request to spend some of the money we have now for design of the parking lot. And the design would allow us to hopefully get in the underground electric next year and start the project. We wouldn't complete it to the following year because we need additional funding. The engineering would kind of further develop conceptual plans that we have talked about, which would eliminate more parking, create much more pedestrian space, and allow businesses to expand facing the lake. We've done the boundary survey. We have identified these areas in which we might need to make some additional easements or land swaps to make everyone legal. But we had a great meeting. I think all 3 property owners were present at the last dock committee, and they were supportive of us going forward with this. So this is just the capital reserve fund, but it is part of the bigger project. And next week, we'll be here requesting to spend some of that money.
Yeah, and this currently has 153 in the fund. We've got the payment for the
boundary
survey, and I believe it's like 41,000 you're coming for next.
Correct. So I'll have the accounting showing what's there, what we spent, and then we request for the additional spending to get us to where we need to be to continue the project moving along.
And you bring back that design that we're looking towards.
Yes, we're trying to get a commitment. Those concept plans, hopefully I'll have mid-January, showing the reduction in parking and alternatives we talked about. Some brought up some comments. Can we do this? Can we move the transformers? So we're talking to Barry. Is it possible? Because that's definitely going to take up at least 1 or 2 parking spaces. Can it be moved? I don't think it can be, but we're looking at those options.
All righty, we moving on?
Water Resources Non-Capital Reserve Fund to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be placed in the existing non-capital reserve fund pursuant to RSA 35(1)C for the purpose of watershed management planning, including engineering, design, permitting, best management practices for stormwater drainage and nutrient mitigation, grant matching, and education, these funds are under the custody of the trustee of trust funds, with the selectmen as agents to expend from this non-capital reserve fund.
It's the same as last year. The only thing I thought on that one, we might want to put the word construction in.
Is best management practices considered construction, Dave, or should we add that?
You know, it's kind of funny. It's construction of best management practices. It's intended to mean that, but the word, I think, like Linda,
Be nice to have the word there.
that we know it's also going to fund construction. We have great news on the efforts of the committee and the efforts Tavis made an application, so we got $100,000 going towards the watershed management plan in Wolfeboro Bay. We have a good signal that we're going to get another grant, a 319 grant for helping with White Gate Lane. So a lot of good things are happening because of the committee. And this is another thing, even though that's good news, we got to make this permanent commitment to water quality. So there always will be projects that will need matching money. So building this up is a really good thing.
Okay. Wastewater Treatment Plant Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $175,000 to be deposited in the existing wastewater treatment plant capital reserve fund under the custody of the trustee of trust funds, with the selectmen as agents to expend from this capital reserve fund.
So this is an important one. The last we talked about, we had made application for a $10 million grant loan for a new wastewater treatment facility and administration building and garage for the water sewer department. That did not score high enough to get any grant money, so I said, Jim, we need to pull it at this point because we have a lot with the pump stations, and whereas all the wastewater projects do fall on the tax dollars, I think earlier we said we would only go forward with projects if we got the 50% funding on them. So the big project did not get it. We still have a better shot, I think, if we repackage it for next year to get some of the funding. So, but to keep the project moving, we've done the quick assessment and master planning level document, which has just been completed. What I'd like to do is have this money so we can continue in case we have an emergency. We are pushing the useful life of a lot of the systems. If something breaks, this allows us to be able to jump on it quickly. It also gives us the funding we need to do the basis of design report. So this time next year, I would have better plans and cost estimates and a better application into the state. So again, we're hopeful that if next year the funding comes, then we can score bigger grant. Then, if we can get 50 cents on a dollar, then I think it's an easier sell to the taxpayer. So this is important for us to continue. It will come back to the board for spending that money, and we do anticipate, again, some construction dollars. Right now, we're working on a lighting project and the Hall Road, so there'll be some money there, but a big chunk of it will go for the basis of design report.
Because if you add this 175, you got about 548,000 in the.
We need to do it, yeah, so I should probably, working with KC, we have a lot of money that's out, so that has been either committed or spent. We just haven't got it back from the trustees yet, so we have to make that.
We should get it, because that's what I look at, and then people are going to say, wow, you've got all this money.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, let's move on unless somebody has a question.
Public Works Vehicle Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $185,000 to be deposited in the existing Public Works Vehicle and Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, which is under the custody of the trustee of trust funds, with the selectmen designated as agents to expend from this capital reserve fund.
Again, put another standard one, but unfortunately in these times, nothing is standard. We would try to go out to bid for trucks, and it is crazy. So they will not, no one will give me a bid that they won't, it's only good for 30 days. They said if we order the truck now, they couldn't guarantee it in 2022. Big trucks are getting pretty scary. I'm not sure what's going on with the supply chain. So we are continuing to put the money aside. We are looking at, there are some trucks that are available now that won't be available next year. There may be, and we're looking at potential. We have a chunk of money still there, I think 260,000 if you're looking on the cap reserve.
Correct. Yep.
So normally we do is we ask for the money, we say what we're going to buy in 2022, and then we would wait until after town meeting. Technically, we don't have to do that. We could buy the trucks now and still raise the money for next year. So we are working with Jim. We're going to make a request next meeting for trucks to buy this year that were planned for next year, if they're still available. We have a couple leads on some good trucks we think are pretty decent deals, that if we could order them now, it would help us outline this, because next year we can't buy the trucks. It doesn't seem to make sense, but the supply chain with different manufacturers, whether it's a chip for the Ford trucks or GMC is not making a certain model, or biggest thing is most trucks now, they're building for guys to drive around with the living room in the back seat. So you can't buy a municipal truck anymore. All the trucks are geared, they're putting all their effort into where they can make money. So a Ford that I bought for $50,000 now sells for $75,000. I can't buy that truck. So it's really becoming a problem for the municipal, and then they're just now going to be where they can make the quick money, I guess. So that's an issue for us. So again, standard warrant article but behind the scenes, we're scrambling, and we may be towards you next week if we can make that work.
Righty, move on. Maintenance.
Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be placed in the existing Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund established for the purpose of making needed repairs and performing needed maintenance to town buildings, facilities. This capital reserve fund is under the custody of the trustee of trust funds for the selectmen designated as agents to expend capital reserve fund.
Freestanding.
Yep.
Again, we're building that up. We have many building projects. We haven't spent a lot of it. We are working with solid waste with the bathrooms up there, and not much to add to that.
Okay, let's move on.
Solid waste site upgrades. So just to preface this one, when we met with the budget committee went through this capital outlay, and they kind of requested that we bring this forward in a warrant article rather than a capital outlay. In talking with Dave, we felt it was important as well to start building a management plan for that site going forward. So you will see an increase in the number here. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $125,000 for the purpose of rebuilding concrete blocks, walls, and pads, correcting pavement deficiencies, and addressing safety issues at the solid waste facility. This appropriation is non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 32(7), Roman numeral 6, and shall lapse on December 31, 2023, or upon completion of the project, whichever occurs first.
Is there a management plan with this 125? And should that
will
be
be added into it.
That needs to be added.
now.
So again, good point, because Casey brought this to my attention when the budget committee said take it out of capital outlay. They said fix everything. Well, we can't fix everything for $95,000. We were kind of trying to address, but we think it is very important to lay out the long-term plan, and we're going to do as much as we can for the money we have, but also then develop an asset management plan. We have it for the equipment. We don't have it for the facility. So this is where we're going to add that, and we should add that language for the long-term plan.
Okay. One.
Next one, hire new highway employee and purchase a new plow truck. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $139,600 for the purpose of purchasing an additional 1-ton plow truck equipped for winter road maintenance, and to hire an additional equipment operator effective July 2022 in the Department of Public Works Highway Division. Vehicle $100,000, position with benefits $39,600, total $139,600. If we talked about this pretty intensely earlier in the year about the need for additional staffing at the Department of Public Works, especially if there are people interested in the town taking over private roads, where there has been a lot of interest in that. This is step one in being able to consider that going forward, Dave.
Correct, and it should be noted that it's only 6 months on the salary. It's based on an assumption, and it's also based on assumption it's a smaller truck of the $100,000. Again, we put that number until I got the shock price lately, so that's a tight number for the trucks now. I thought it was safe, but that'll be a smaller truck, because most of these are going to be subdivision roads with cul-de-sacs and hammerheads that you're going to have to turn around in.
Just one question. What's going to be harder to get, the truck or the employee?
Good rhetorical question.
I thought we were also
I think
going to
getting the warrant article is going to be much harder to get passed, so I don't think you have a shot at that. But
I thought we also were going to look to see what it would cost us to get a contractor to do them.
We have some questions out to contractors.
We've reached out to some contractors, just waiting for the response back. Okay, and the last one, again, this came as a result of going through the budget committee to establish a sidewalk capital reserve fund. We did have this originally in. We brought it back to you after you removed it as a capital or as a warrant article, but it's here to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to create a sidewalk capital reserve fund. Said fund shall be under the custody of trustee of trust funds and designated to selectmen agents to expend this capital reserve fund. As Dave said, we have 7.5 miles of sidewalk. Some of it is in disrepair, and we've got to start planning at some point replacement and upgrades to our existing sidewalk.
Correct, and this allows us to kind of put together plans and bid out the work out. We have worked on these. We made progress about 10 years ago. And again, it seems like it was just yesterday. Oh, we did sidewalk. Well, it hasn't been 5 or 6 years. So when you look at the inventory, you can now see a lot of the roads that were fair now are poor. The ones that were good are dropping down. And so it's really something that, and we do have a very much a walkable community, so we do want to stay on top of that. So hopefully we can support that and continue to grow that going forward.
And that is it.
Say that's it, all right. We will see this on the 15th.
Yep.
Hopefully it will be gone through.
It'll be scrubbed, and hopefully we'll have attorney feedback.
And will we get the tax impact?
Hopeful, not positive at this point. Casey, do you want to address that?
Yes, I think I have direction on what I think the, because you didn't vote on them, I'll just make assumptions on the presentation on what the bond would be, and I will reach out to the bond bank and see if I can get the tax rate impact for the bonds.
Okay, that would be great. Is there anything else, selectmen, any other selectmen want on any of these? Brad?
I just bring up too, at last night's planning board meeting, one of the things we talked about was updating the building codes that they're operating under. The newest ones out there, I believe, are 2015 right now, but what the planning department has on the books are older ones than that. So we put a vote last night to request, and Tavis should be reaching out to Jim shortly, to have the selectmen put a warrant article together for the upgrade of that. Just want to let you know that there's no money involved, obviously, but there just be another warrant article to add to the list.
Good. Dave?
Well, Hampshire building officials had their annual meeting today. They're asking the legislature to adopt the 2018 ICC code. That will bring us up to 2018. Can't bring it current because the state won't adopt it. Town can't. If the state adopts it, that's what you go by.
Right.
Same with the electrical code. That's separate from the ICC codes.
But the state, didn't it go up to 217?
Only
one.
Yeah. 2018 is the one that we're currently going to be on.
Right.
ICC codes now.
All right. So we're going to, you'll put it together, so wherever we are, we're going to move it up to the year that the legislature has agreed on.
Yep.
And then if they go on, we'll have to do it another. Have you heard anything from the Friends of the Libby on whether they're going to sign that MOU?
I had an email, and I talked to Jim earlier today. Apparently they said they sent a letter to us, which nobody has seen yet. So that's where it's at right now. I emailed back to them that if you could send an electronic version to me, and I haven't gotten that yet. That was just all happened today. So apparently they've responded in some regard to us. They want to know what our thoughts were because they want to move ahead with their fundraising. So apparently there's something
I'll go pick it up.
to us. So when we see it, we don't know what it is.
The letter's in the mail, right?
Letters in the mail.
I'll go pick it up if she wants to print out another copy.
I did talk with Amy this morning, and she confirmed that she's seen nothing.
I mean, you can lose things. Roger sent a check for his insurance and 6 weeks later, they didn't have it.
Yeah. What happens? Yeah.
Yeah, where it goes.
Checks in the mail.
Yep, know that. Any other business?
I have a question.
Okay.
It seems like Dave has been kind of beside himself a couple of times because now, like the Taylor community, he didn't find out about that or didn't know about that 61 units. And then we have the extension on Harriman Hill. And then we have a couple of large projects for workforce housing coming into town currently. So I'm just wondering how we can make sure that there's good communication between these projects and planning and the selectmen and the town manager and the Department of Public Works, who is responsible for making sure that there's water supplies available and sewer supplies available and sidewalks available. Just, I'm wondering how we can get better lines of communication so everybody understands what's happening.
I'm not curious why because obviously the Taylor home thing would have gone through TRC,
I would have thought so too.
and so all the departments are notified of that and stuff, so I don't know, I didn't see the stuff, but
Can we check to see if they did a TRC on that?
good, I would imagine Travis could be asked that. Like I said, I'm sure he's going to be contacting you shortly regarding the warrant article part on the building code, so.
And like the communication with Abernathy, how did that get not to us? That the trails were going in. We have a communication issue that we got to address so that things like this don't happen. That's why I felt silly kind of asking about is Port Wedlon going to, how do we make sure that they pay their $10,000 every year? But I could see in 7 years, all of a sudden they have a change in their board, they run out of money and they stop, they just say, well, we don't have the money to pay you anymore. And stuff like that happens.
Okay. Any other business? I'm going to ask that we skip committee reports. This is not a regular meeting of ours. Do you have anything to report to us? Okay.
I do not.
That is share.
Yeah, he's had enough of us for tonight. Any questions from the press? They're okay, we're moving on. Any public input? All right.
Move we adjourn.
Oh, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we're out of here.
Yes.
Yes,
Am I
yes,
still
yes.
invited to the Christmas